It is late, and the world outside has fallen quiet. The sounds of traffic have faded, the house is still, and there is only the soft hum of the night. But inside, in the landscape of the mind, a storm is raging. Perhaps this scene feels familiar to you. Lying in the dark, your body is tired, yearning for rest, but your thoughts race without permission. They chase each other in an endless loop. A list of things to do tomorrow, a conversation from yesterday that you wish had gone differently, a vague and heavy feeling of anxiety about the future, a sense of falling behind in a race you never remember signing up for. You turn over, adjusting your pillow, hoping that a new position will somehow bring a new state of mind, but the internal noise continues. It is a lonely feeling, this battle for peace within the confines of your own skull. But what if this struggle is not a personal failure? What if this restlessness, this constant mental chatter, is not a sign that something is wrong with you, but rather a natural response to the world we live in? We exist in a state of constant stimulation, a world that celebrates being busy, a culture that floods us with images of what we should have and who we should be. Our attention is pulled in 1,000 different directions by screens, by notifications, by the unending pressure to be productive, to be happy, to be more. This quiet, persistent feeling of being overwhelmed, this sense of inner turmoil, is the shared ailment of our time. It is the deep exhaustion that sleep alone cannot cure. But there is an ancient path, a gentle wisdom that has been speaking to this very condition for over 2,500 years. It is a path that does not demand you believe in anything, but simply invites you to look, to observe, to understand the nature of your own mind. It offers not a doctrine to be memorized, but a set of practical tools, a way to find the quiet center that already exists within you, buried beneath the noise. It suggests that peace is not something you must build or acquire from the outside world, but a natural state you can return to. This is an invitation to walk that path, to explore that inner landscape not as a battlefield, but as a garden that you can gently and patiently cultivate. It begins not with a grand gesture, but with the simplest of steps, with the first of many stories designed to quiet the storm and guide you home to yourself. The internal chatter we spoke of, that restless storm of thoughts, has a name in the ancient teachings of the East. It is called capacita, which translates beautifully and so accurately as the monkey mind. Imagine a small monkey inside a large, empty room that represents your awareness. This monkey is agitated. It cannot stay still for even a moment. It leaps from the past to the future, then back again. It screeches for attention, tugging at your sleeve with a memory of something you regret. Before you can fully examine that memory, it has already swung away, dangling a future worry before your eyes, a fear of what might happen tomorrow. It chatters incessantly, narrating your life, judging your actions, comparing you to others. It is fascinated by shiny objects, a new desire, a fresh grievance, a sudden distraction. It picks one up, examines it frantically for a second, then drops it to chase another. This is the state in which many of us live, day and night. Our consciousness is not a calm, open space, but a playground for a frantic, untamed creature. We are not in control. We are simply being dragged along on this chaotic journey through the branches of our own thoughts. The exhaustion we feel is not just physical, it is the deep mental fatigue that comes from this constant internal motion. It is important to understand that this is not a fault in our wiring. The monkey is not our enemy. Its nature is simply to jump, to be curious, to react. For our ancestors, this quick, reactive mind was a survival tool. It scanned the horizon for threats, it remembered where to find food, it planned for the changing seasons. But the world we have built is a world that has placed this ancient mind into a digital jungle of infinite stimulation. Our environment is now perfectly engineered to make our monkey mind more frantic than it has ever been. Every notification on our phone is a new branch for it to swing to. Every email is a potential threat or reward. The endless scroll of social media is a waterfall of shiny objects, new outrages, new desires, new comparisons, each one hooking the monkey's attention for a fleeting moment before the next one appears. We are conditioning ourselves, hour by hour, to have a shorter attention span, to crave novelty, to be in a constant state of low-grade agitation. We check our phones not because we need specific information, but because the monkey is bored and wants to jump. We fill every spare moment of silence, waiting in line, walking down the street, with a podcast or music, or a quick glance at the news, because the quiet is unfamiliar and the monkey is restless. We have created a habitat that feeds its frenzy, and then we wonder why we cannot find a moment of peace. The problem is not the monkey itself, but the fact that we have been feeding it a diet of pure sugar and caffeine, and we have forgotten how to show it the way to a quiet clearing in the forest where it can rest. Our first and most natural reaction to this inner chaos is to fight it. When a painful thought arises, our instinct is to push it away. When the mind is racing at 3 a.m, we command it, be quiet, stop thinking. We try to build a cage for the monkey. We try to pin it down, to silence its chatter through sheer force of will. But have you ever tried to hold a frantic creature still? The more you struggle with it, the more it resists. The more you try to suppress a thought, the more powerful and persistent it seems to become. A psychologist might call this the ironic process theory. The simple act of trying not to think about a white bear, for instance, makes the image of that white bear pop into your head with startling clarity. The ancient masters understood this intuitively. Trying to fight the monkey mind is like trying to flatten ripples in a pond by slapping them with your hand. All you do is create more turbulence, more chaos. This internal battle is utterly exhausting. It creates a deep tension in our being, a sense of being at war with ourselves. We believe that if we could just defeat this part of our mind, we would find peace. But this approach is based on a fundamental misunderstanding. The monkey is not a separate entity to be conquered. It is a part of our own mental energy. To fight it is to fight ourselves. The result is not peace, but a state of perpetual inner conflict, a silent, draining civil war that we wage every single day. So what is the alternative? The wisdom of this path suggests something radical, something that goes against all our instincts. Do not fight the monkey, do not chase it, do not yell at it, or try to cage it. Instead, simply sit down. In the middle of the room, in the middle of the chaos, just sit and watch. This is the beginning of taming the monkey mind. It is the practice of becoming the observer, the silent witness to the mind's activity. Imagine you are sitting quietly on the bank of a river. The thoughts, the worries, the memories, they are like leaves and twigs floating by on the current. Your job is not to jump into the river and grab them. It is not to judge them as good leaves or bad leaves. It is simply to watch them float by. A thought of work appears, you notice it. Ah, there is a thought about work, and then you let it float on. A memory of a past hurt arises. You acknowledge it. There is that memory again, and you let it drift away. You do not offer the monkey a new branch to grab onto by engaging with the thought. You simply let it be. In the beginning, this is incredibly difficult. The monkey is not used to being ignored. It will screech louder. It will jump up and down. It will wave more and more dramatic thoughts in your face to get your attention. This is the moment where most of us give up. We think, this isn't working. My mind is more chaotic than ever. But this is a crucial part of the process. The monkey is testing you. It is seeing if you will fall back into the old habit of chasing it. The instruction is to remain still, patiently, gently, without judgment. When you realize you have been carried away by a thought, that you have jumped into the river and are now halfway downstream, you do not scold yourself. You simply and with great kindness guide yourself back to the riverbank to resume your watch. Each time you do this, you are gently retraining your mind. You are subtly weakening the monkey's power over you. And then something remarkable begins to happen. Slowly, gradually, the monkey begins to calm down. Seeing that you are no longer playing its game, it begins to settle. The gaps between the thoughts grow a little longer. A moment of pure, simple silence might appear. It might only last for a second or two, but in that second, you experience a profound sense of peace and freedom. The monkey is still there, perhaps sitting quietly in a corner, grooming itself, but it is no longer running the show. You begin to realize a profound truth. You are not the monkey. You are not the thoughts. You are not the emotions. You are the space in which they all arise. You are the quiet, aware presence that is watching the spectacle. This realization is the dawn of true freedom. It is the understanding that while you cannot always stop the thoughts from appearing, you can choose not to be defined by them, not to be enslaved by them. This is the art of taming the mind, not through force, but through gentle, compassionate, and persistent awareness. We have now seen the nature of our unquiet mind, this restless monkey, and we have learned that the path to peace is not through struggle, but through observation. But to be a good observer, to be able to sit patiently on that riverbank, we need an anchor. We need a focal point to which we can return, again and again, every time we get swept away by the current of thought. We need something that can hold our attention in the present moment, something simple, reliable, and always available to us, no matter how chaotic the inner storm may be. This anchor, this most fundamental tool for calming the mind and beginning the journey home, is the one thing that has been with you since the moment you were born. It is your own breath. We have given a name to our inner restlessness, the monkey mind, and we have discovered that the way to soothe it is not to fight it, but to patiently observe it. But to do this, to sit steadily on the riverbank of our own awareness, we need an anchor. We need a place to secure our attention, a focal point that can hold us firm when the currents of thought and emotion try to sweep us away. This anchor is the most humble, most intimate, and most reliable process in our lives. It is the simple, rhythmic, life-sustaining act of breathing. Your breath is the perfect anchor for one profound reason. It is always in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past, nor can you take a breath in the future. To be aware of your breath is, by definition, to be present. The monkey mind, as we know, loves to live anywhere but the present. It dwells in the regrets of yesterday and the anxieties of tomorrow. By gently resting our awareness on the physical sensations of breathing, we are pulling our consciousness out of the imaginary worlds of past and future and grounding it firmly in the reality of the here and now. The breath is a bridge, a direct pathway back to the only moment that ever truly exists, this moment. The practice of observing the breath, known as anapanasati, is the foundation stone of this entire path. Its beauty lies in its simplicity. There is nothing you need to acquire and nothing you need to believe. Your breath is already here. The only task is to become acquainted with it. So let us explore how this is done. You can begin right now as you are listening, or you can find a time later, perhaps for just 5 minutes, to sit in a quiet place. You can sit in a chair with your feet flat on the floor or on a cushion on the ground. You can even lie down, although this can sometimes lead to sleep. The posture is not about rigidity. It is about creating a state of relaxed alertness, a body that is at ease but dignified. Let your back be straight but not stiff, allowing the energy to flow. Gently, you can allow your eyes to close, or, if you prefer, you can leave them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze toward the floor. Now, bring your attention, your gentle curiosity, to the sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves your body. There is no need to change it in any way. The body knows how to breathe. Do not try to make it deeper or longer or slower. Your task is not to be the manager of the breath, but simply the watcher of the breath. Where do you feel it most clearly? Perhaps it is the cool sensation of the air as it passes the tip of your nostrils. Perhaps it is the subtle rise and fall of your chest. Or maybe you feel it deeper in your body, in the gentle expansion and contraction of your abdomen. There is no correct place. Simply choose one spot and rest your attention there as you might rest a butterfly on your hand, with lightness and care. And then you just watch. Feel the entire journey of one in-breath, from the moment it begins to the very peak, and then feel the entire journey of the out-breath from the moment it begins until it completely dissolves. You might find it helpful to use a quiet mental note, a soft whisper in the mind, in as you breathe in and out as you breathe out. This is not a command, but a gentle label, helping to keep the mind from wandering too far. At first, the mind will wander. This is not a sign of failure. It is simply what minds do. After a few seconds, you may find you are no longer watching the breath, but are instead lost in a thought, a plan, a memory. The moment you realize this, the moment you notice that your attention has strayed, is a moment of victory. That is the moment of mindfulness. In that moment, without any scolding or frustration, you gently acknowledge where the mind has been, and then you softly, kindly, guide your attention back to the anchor, back to the sensation of the breath. You will do this 100 times. You may do this 1,000 times. The practice is not about staying on the breath perfectly. The practice is the gentle act of returning over and over again. In the ancient texts, there is a beautiful story of the Buddha instructing his own son, a young monk named Rahula. He wanted to teach Rahula the proper quality of attention for watching the breath. He did not use harsh or demanding language. Instead, he used a simple analogy from daily life. He said, Rahula, just as a skilled carpenter or his apprentice, when making a long cut, knows I am making a long cut, and when making a shortcut, knows I am making a shortcut, so too, you should know I am breathing in a long breath, or I am breathing in a short breath. This imagery is so powerful. Think of a master craftsman at work. His attention is steady and focused on the line he is cutting. He is not tense. He is not gripping the saw with white knuckles. He is not angry at the wood. His focus is relaxed, flowing, and precise. He works with the nature of the tool and the material. This is the quality of mind we bring to the breath. We are not forcing our attention onto it. We are allowing our attention to rest upon it. We are observing its natural rhythm, whether it is long or short, deep or shallow, without judgment, without interference. We are cultivating a relaxed, patient, and unwavering presence, just like the carpenter who trusts his skill and his tools. It is crucial to understand that this practice is not a war against your thoughts. Many people approach meditation with the idea that the goal is to empty the mind, to achieve a state of pure blankness. When thoughts inevitably arise, they feel they have failed. This is a fundamental misunderstanding that causes much frustration. The purpose of using the breath as an anchor is not to stop the waves of thought from rolling in. The ocean will always have waves. The purpose is to learn how to surf. The breath is your surfboard. It provides stability in the midst of the ocean's movement. It gives you a place of refuge. When a particularly large and powerful wave of emotion, like anger or sadness, threatens to pull you under, you can intentionally turn your focus to the anchor. You can feel the solid, real sensation of the air in your lungs, the steady rhythm of your own life force. This act of returning to the breath does not magically erase the emotion, but it creates a space around it. It stops you from being completely consumed by it. You are no longer the emotion. You are the one who is aware of the emotion, while also being aware of the breath. This creates a profound shift. The breath becomes a safe harbor in any storm, a quiet room you can step into at any moment, no matter what is happening in the outside world or in your own mind. It is your portable sanctuary. This simple act of returning to the breath, practiced for even a few minutes each day, begins to ripple out into the rest of your life. You are training your mind to be more stable, more focused, and less reactive. You might find yourself in a traffic jam, and instead of feeling your frustration rise, you remember your anchor. You take 3 conscious breaths, feeling the air move in and out. The traffic jam has not changed, but your experience of it has. You are about to have a difficult conversation, and you feel the familiar knot of anxiety in your stomach. You can pause and connect with your anchor for just a moment, grounding yourself before you speak. The breath becomes a tool not just for formal meditation, but for living your life with more presence and less stress. It is the first and most powerful step in reclaiming authority over your own mind. We have found our anchor. We have used it to bring ourselves home to the present moment, creating a platform of relative calm and stability. Now, from this grounded perspective, we can begin the work of looking more deeply. What do we do now that we are here? How do we use this newfound stability to see our inner and outer worlds with more clarity, compassion, and wisdom? This leads us to the next step on our path, the art of true seeing, the practice of mindfulness itself. The anchor of the breath has brought us home to the present moment. It has given us a stable ground beneath our feet, a place of refuge from the ceaseless activity of the monkey mind. Now that we are here, in the now, we can begin to learn the art of seeing. This art has a name you have likely heard many times. It is mindfulness. The word is used so often in our modern world that its deeper meaning can become diluted, like a tea that has been steeped too many times. We associate it with relaxation or with a vague sense of calm. But in its original sense, mindfulness, or sati in the ancient Pali language, is something far more active, precise, and transformative. It is not about zoning out, it is about zoning in. The most classic definition breaks it down into three essential parts: paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Let's look at these components. Paying attention, on purpose. This means it is a deliberate act. It is the conscious choice to direct your awareness towards something, rather than letting the monkey mind drag your attention wherever it pleases. It is an act of intention. In the present moment, this is where our anchor of the breath becomes so vital. The present moment is our field of practice. Mindfulness is the practice of keeping our awareness firmly planted in the reality of what is happening right here, right now, not in the ghosts of the past or the phantoms of the future. And finally, the most crucial and perhaps the most difficult part, non-judgmentally. This is the quality of awareness that changes everything. It means observing our experience, both internal and external, without filtering it through the screen of our likes and dislikes, our opinions, our criticisms, or our stories. It is the simple, clear seeing of what is. For instance, you are sitting outside and you feel a cool breeze. A purely mindful observation is simply, there is a cool breeze. But our habitual mind immediately adds a layer of judgment. Oh, this breeze is so nice. I wish it would stay, or this breeze is too cold. I don't like it. Mindfulness is the practice of noticing the raw data of experience before we add our stories to it. It is seeing the world not as we wish it were or fear it might be, but simply as it is. The greatest power of this practice lies in its ability to create a space, a pause, between a stimulus and our reaction to it. Our lives, for the most part, are run on autopilot. We are creatures of habit, driven by deep conditioning. An event happens and we react instantaneously without conscious thought. Someone criticizes you and a feeling of defensiveness or anger immediately flares up. You receive a piece of good news and a feeling of grasping and wanting more arises. There is no space between the event and the reaction. It is a single, fused experience. This is what it means to be a slave to our conditioning. Mindfulness introduces a sacred pause into this process. The stimulus still occurs, the criticism is still spoken, but because you have been practicing, because you are anchored in a state of awareness, you can watch the initial reaction arising within you. You can feel the heat of anger beginning to form in your chest. You can notice the defensive thoughts starting to chatter in your mind. But because you are watching it, you are not consumed by it. You have created a sliver of space, a moment of freedom, and in that space, you have a choice. You can choose to let the automatic, conditioned reaction play out, or you can choose to respond differently. You can choose to breathe, you can choose to listen, you can choose to remain silent. In that space between stimulus and response lies our growth, our freedom, and all our power. We move from being a reactive creature, pushed and pulled by circumstance, to a responsive human being, acting with wisdom and intention. This art of true seeing is not something reserved only for the time you spend sitting on a meditation cushion. That is formal practice, the gymnasium where you train the muscle of awareness. The real purpose is to bring that awareness into every moment of your life. This is informal practice. You can transform any mundane activity into a profound meditation. Consider the simple act of drinking a cup of tea. How often do we do this while also scrolling through our phone, watching television, or being lost in thought? The tea is gone, and we barely remember drinking it. A mindful cup of tea is a different universe. You begin by feeling the warmth of the cup in your hands. You notice the color of the liquid, the steam rising from its surface. You bring it to your nose and inhale its fragrance. Then, you take a sip, and you truly taste it, feeling its warmth and flavor spread through your mouth. In these few moments, you are fully present. You are not solving any of your life's problems, but you are giving yourself a moment of peace, a moment of being fully alive. You can do this while walking. Instead of rushing from one place to another, lost in your mental to-do list, you can bring your attention to the physical sensations of walking. Feel the contact of your feet on the ground, the rhythm of your stride, the way your body moves through space. The journey itself becomes the destination. You can practice mindful listening, giving another person the precious gift of your full, undivided attention. Instead of planning your reply while they are speaking, you simply listen with the sole aim of understanding. You listen to their words, their tone of voice, their body language. This simple shift can transform your relationships. Life itself becomes your meditation. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates this quality of mindful, non-judgmental presence. Two monks, an old master and a young novice, were traveling together. They came to a river with a strong current. A beautiful young woman was standing there, afraid to cross. Without hesitation, the old master lifted the woman onto his shoulders, carried her across the turbulent water, and gently set her down on the other side. He then continued on his way. The young novice was aghast. He followed his master, his mind in turmoil. Monks were strictly forbidden from touching women. How could his master have done such a thing? For hours, they walked in silence, but the young monk grew more and more agitated, replaying the scene over and over in his mind, fueling his indignation. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "Master, how could you do that? You know we are not supposed to touch a woman, yet you carried her across the river." The old monk looked at him with a calm, gentle expression. "Brother," he said, "I put that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story brilliantly captures the essence of mindfulness. The old monk responded to the need of the present moment with compassion. The act was the stimulus. He responded, and then he let it go completely. He remained in the present. The young monk, however, clung to the event. He added layers of judgment, of criticism, of story. He was not in the present moment. He was lost in the mental drama of his own creation, carrying a burden that was no longer real. He was creating his own suffering. Mindfulness, this art of true seeing, is the master key that allows us to put down our unnecessary burden. It is the ability to see our monkey mind without getting entangled in its drama. It is the skill that allows us to use the breath as an anchor to return to reality. And now, this same skill will serve as our gentle but powerful lamp, allowing us to look into the deeper truths of our own experience. So far, we have focused on calming the mind and finding the present. But what do we find here? Life is not always a warm cup of tea or a pleasant walk. The present moment also contains discomfort, pain, and difficulty. Our usual habit is to run from these experiences, to distract ourselves, to numb the feeling. Mindfulness invites us to do something radical, to turn toward our discomfort with the same open, curious, and non-judgmental attention. It asks us to look gently, with courage, at the very nature of our dissatisfaction. This is not to wallow in misery, but to understand it. For it is only by looking directly at the nature of our unease that we can begin to discover its cause and ultimately its cure. This brings us to the very heart of the Buddha's first great teaching, the truth about the existence of suffering. With our awareness anchored in the present moment, we now have the stability to turn our gentle gaze toward the entirety of our human experience, not just the pleasant parts. We are invited to look with courage and kindness at the very nature of our own lives. This brings us to the foundation of the Buddha's path to freedom, a teaching known as the Four Noble Truths. These are not commandments to be obeyed, nor are they articles of faith to be blindly accepted. They are four realities, four profound observations about the nature of life that we are invited to investigate and verify for ourselves. The very first of these truths is the truth of dukkha. This ancient word from the Pali language is often translated as suffering, but this single English word is too heavy, too laden with a sense of tragedy to capture the full scope of its meaning. While dukkha certainly includes the great sorrows of life like grief, sickness, and loss, it also points to something far more subtle, more pervasive, and more familiar to us in our daily lives. Think of it as a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, a background hum of anxiety, the feeling that something is not quite right, that something is missing. It is the stress of a deadline, the disappointment when our hopes are not met, the irritation of being stuck in traffic. It is the friction that exists between the world as it is and the world as we want it to be. The Buddha was like a great physician, and his first noble truth was not a pessimistic judgment on life, but a clear, compassionate diagnosis of the human condition. He was simply naming the illness so that we could begin to understand it. To truly grasp this, it helps to see that dukkha manifests in three distinct ways. The first is the one we all know, the suffering of suffering, or dukkha dukkha. This is the obvious pain of our existence. It is the headache that throbs in your temples, the sharp pain of a physical injury, the profound ache of a broken heart, the anguish of losing someone you love. It is the raw, undeniable pain that is an unavoidable part of having a body and a heart in this world. This form of dukkha needs little explanation, as we have all felt its sting. The second form, however, is more subtle. It is the suffering of change, or viparinama dukkha. This is the stress and anxiety that arises from the fact that even pleasant experiences are impermanent. Think of a perfect, happy moment, a beautiful vacation, a joyful celebration. We cling to it. We want it to last forever. The inherent anxiety in that clinging, the knowledge that this moment will end, is a form of dukkha. The joy of a new promotion eventually fades, and the mind starts looking for the next achievement. The pleasure of a delicious meal is fleeting. This is the suffering born from our resistance to the natural law of impermanence. We are trying to build a solid house on shifting sands, and the constant effort to keep it from collapsing is a source of deep, underlying stress. The third and most profound form is the suffering of conditioned existence, or sankhara dukkha. This is the baseline, pervasive unsatisfactoriness of being a vulnerable, mortal being in a world of constant change. It is that subtle background feeling of unease that we are often not even conscious of, the existential angst that keeps the monkey mind so busy. It is the stress of constantly having to maintain our identity, to defend our ego, to navigate the complexities of life. It is the reason why, even when things are going well, when there is no obvious pain or loss, we can still feel a sense of restlessness, a feeling that something is incomplete. This is the fundamental friction of our existence. By understanding these three forms, we can begin to see that dukkha is not just about tragic events. It is woven into the very fabric of our ordinary lives. Acknowledging this is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of radical realism. It is the first step toward freedom, because we cannot solve a problem that we refuse to acknowledge exists. There is a deeply moving story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates this truth more powerfully than any philosophical explanation. It is the story of a young woman named Kisa Gotami. Her life was filled with joy, for she had just given birth to her first and only son. But one day, the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so powerful that it drove her to madness. She refused to accept that her son was gone. She picked up his small, lifeless body and went from house to house, desperately begging for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man saw her profound despair and with great compassion suggested she go and see the Buddha. Clasping her dead child to her chest, she went to the Enlightened One and pleaded with him for a cure. The Buddha looked at her not with judgment, but with infinite tenderness. He told her he could help, but first she must bring him one simple thing, a single mustard seed. Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. But then the Buddha added one condition. The mustard seed must come from a house where no one, not a child, not a husband or wife, not a parent or a servant, had ever died. Filled with a renewed sense of purpose, she began her quest. She went to the first house, and the family there was happy to give her a mustard seed. But when she asked the vital question, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" the woman of the house replied with sadness, "I have given you what you asked, but the living are few, and the dead are many. Last year my husband died. Kisagutami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Every family had a mustard seed to spare, but every family had also known the profound sorrow of loss. One had lost a mother, another a daughter, another a father. As the sun began to set, the truth slowly dawned on her, not as a harsh lesson, but as a deep, shared reality. Her unbearable personal grief was not hers alone. It was the universal inheritance of all beings. The pain of loss was the thread that connected her to every single person she had met that day. Her heart, once constricted by her own singular agony, began to open into a vast, compassionate understanding of the human condition. She realized she could not find a single house untouched by death. She gently laid her son's body down in the forest and returned to the Buddha. He looked at her and asked, "Did you bring the mustard seed?" And she replied, "The work is done, my lord. I have seen the truth." She had understood the first noble truth, not as a doctrine, but as a lived, breathing reality. This story teaches us that acknowledging suffering is the path to compassion. But it also teaches us something else. Our resistance to pain is often what makes it so much worse. The Buddha used the metaphor of the two arrows. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life. We get sick. We face disappointment. We lose people we love. This first arrow is painful, and it happens to everyone. There is no escape from it. But then, we often fire a second arrow into ourselves. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. Why me? This is unfair. I can't bear it. It is the anger, the resentment, the self-pity, the guilt. The first arrow is the pain. The second arrow is the suffering we add on top of that pain. While we may not always be able to avoid the first arrow, the entire path of mindfulness and wisdom is about learning not to fire the second. By acknowledging dukkha, by looking at it with the clear-eyed, non-judgmental awareness we have been cultivating, we learn to feel the pain of the first arrow without adding the poison of the second. We have now looked bravely at the diagnosis. We have seen that dukkha, in its many forms, is a fundamental aspect of our conditioned experience. We have understood this not as a reason for despair, but as a necessary and realistic starting point for our journey toward healing. This honest appraisal naturally leads us to the next, most crucial question. If this is the condition, what is its cause? What is the root of this fundamental dissatisfaction? What is the fuel that feeds the fire of our discontent? By looking directly at the illness, we are now fully prepared to investigate its origin. This brings us to the threshold of the second noble truth, the cause of suffering. Having looked with clear-eyed compassion at the diagnosis of our shared condition, the reality of dukkha, we are now ready to ask the physician's next question. What is the cause? If this pervasive feeling of unsatisfactoriness is the symptom, what is the underlying disease? The Buddha's second noble truth answers this question directly. It is called samudaya, the truth of the origin of suffering. And the origin, he taught, is a single, powerful force within our own minds. It is an energy called tanha. This Pali word is often translated as desire, but its meaning is closer to thirst or craving. It is not the gentle wish for a better world or the wholesome desire to grow and learn. Tanha is a deep, compulsive, and insatiable thirst. It is the raw, restless energy that fuels the monkey mind, the desperate longing that keeps it swinging from branch to branch, always seeking something outside of ourselves to make us feel complete, to quench a thirst that, by its very nature, can never be satisfied by external things. This craving is the very root of our disquiet. This fundamental thirst manifests in our lives in three distinct ways. The first and most familiar is the craving for sense pleasures, or kamatana. This is the constant thirst for pleasant experiences through our five senses and our mind. It is the craving for a delicious taste, a beautiful sight, an enchanting melody, a pleasant feeling. In our modern world, this is the engine of consumer culture. It is the craving that tells us we will be happy if we just get that new phone, that nicer car, that bigger house. It is the longing for praise, for recognition, for the fleeting validation of a like on social media. It is the relentless pursuit of the next pleasurable hit. The problem is not that pleasure itself is bad. The problem is our dependence on it, our clinging to it, and the inevitable disappointment we feel when it fades, as it always must. We become like a person drinking salt water to quench their thirst. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. The second form of this thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is the craving for existence, or bhavatanya. This is the profound craving to be something, to become more, to solidify our sense of self. It is the deep-seated drive of the ego. It is the ambition to be more successful, more powerful, more intelligent, more admired, or even more spiritual. It is the thirst to leave a mark on the world, to build a legacy, to ensure that our identity continues. It is the voice that whispers, if I can just achieve this one more thing, then I will be truly secure, then I will have proven my worth. This craving fuels our endless striving, our competition with others, and our constant anxiety about our status in our future. We are clinging to a particular idea of who we are or who we should be, and we live in fear of that identity being threatened. The third form of thirst seems like the opposite, but it is merely the other side of the same coin. It is the craving for non-existence, or vibhava tanha. This is the powerful thirst to get rid of something unpleasant. It is aversion, anger, hatred, and denial. It is the desperate wish for our physical or emotional pain to simply go away. It is the irritation we feel toward a person who annoys us, the frustration with a situation that isn't going our way. It is the energy of pushing away, of rejecting reality. When we say, I can't stand this feeling, or I wish this would just stop, we are in the grip of vibhava tanha. Craving for pleasure pulls the world toward us. Craving for non-existence pushes the world away. Both are forms of struggle, a refusal to accept the present moment as it is. They are the two primary strategies of the ego in its futile attempt to control the uncontrollable flow of life. Our modern society is a powerful incubator for all three forms of tanha. The entire advertising industry is a multi-billion-dollar project dedicated to stimulating and amplifying our craving for sense pleasures. It manufactures discontent, showing us what we lack and promising fulfillment through a product. Our work culture and social media ecosystems are massive engines for the craving to become. They present us with curated images of success and happiness, fueling our ambition and our fear of being left behind. And our culture of instant gratification and quick fixes powerfully reinforces the craving to get rid of discomfort. We are taught that any negative feeling, any boredom, any pain should be immediately medicated, distracted from, or eliminated. We are not taught how to simply be with our discomfort. It is no wonder we feel so restless. We are swimming in an ocean of stimuli that constantly provoke and intensify this deep-seated thirst. It is crucial to see this not as a personal moral failing, but as a deeply conditioned habit, powerfully reinforced by the world we inhabit. There is a simple yet profound parable that illustrates how this craving becomes the very mechanism of our own imprisonment. In some parts of Asia, hunters have a clever way of catching monkeys. They take a coconut, hollow it out, and cut a hole in it just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through. Inside the coconut, they place a handful of rice or some other tempting bait. They then secure the coconut to the base of a tree. Eventually, a monkey comes along. It smells the rice, sees the hole, and slips its hand inside. It grasps the rice, making a tight fist. But now, it has a problem. The hole is too small for its closed fist to pass through. It pulls and pulls, screeching in frustration, but it cannot get its hand out. The hunter, who has been watching from a distance, calmly approaches. The monkey sees the hunter coming. It could be free in an instant. All it has to do is open its hand, let go of the rice, and slip its hand out. But its craving, its clinging to the prize in its fist, is so strong that it cannot bring itself to let go, and so it is captured. It is trapped not by the coconut, and not even by the hunter, but by its own clinging fist. This parable is a perfect mirror of our own lives. We are the monkey. The rice represents anything we cling to, a possession, a relationship, a belief about ourselves, a resentment from the past, a desire for a particular future. The coconut is the situation, and our suffering is the trap. Freedom is always available to us, and the path to it is simple, though not always easy. It is the act of letting go. We are imprisoned by our own attachments. We are clinging tightly to things which, by their very nature, are impermanent, ever-changing, and ultimately unable to provide lasting satisfaction. Our suffering arises from this fundamental conflict, the clash between our thirst for permanence and the impermanent nature of reality. It is like trying to build a dam out of sand in the middle of a river. It is an exhausting and doomed endeavor. To see this, to truly understand that our own craving and clinging are the direct source of our disquiet, is not a cause for guilt. It is the most empowering realization we can have. Because if we are the ones creating the conditions for our own unhappiness, it means we also hold the key to our own liberation. We have the power to stop. This profound insight that the cause of suffering is within us and can therefore be undone by us is the bridge that leads us to the third noble truth, the incredible, hopeful news that there can be an end to this cycle, the promise of a peace that is not dependent on anything outside of ourselves. We have walked together into the heart of our own restlessness. We have looked with courage at the diagnosis, the pervasive nature of dukkha, the friction and unsatisfactoriness of a life lived on autopilot. We have investigated its cause, identifying the relentless thirst of tanha, the craving and clinging that keeps us trapped like the monkey with its fist in the coconut. To remain here would be to leave the diagnosis and its cause hanging in the air, a heavy and perhaps hopeless truth. But the journey does not end here. In fact, this is the great turning point. This is where the physician, having explained the illness, offers the profound and life-altering prognosis, the promise of a cure. This is the third noble truth, known as Nirodha, the truth of the cessation of suffering. This truth is a beacon of light, a clear and unwavering statement that liberation from our self-created struggle is possible. The cage door is not locked. The fist can be opened. There is an end to the war within. This state of cessation, this ultimate peace, is known by a word that is famous throughout the world, yet is deeply misunderstood. That word is nirvana. The word itself in the ancient Pali language literally means to extinguish or to blow out, like blowing out a candle flame. This immediately raises the question, what is being extinguished? It is not the self. It is not our life force. It is not our personality. What is extinguished are the three fires that cause all our suffering, the very fires fueled by tanha. These are the fire of greed, our compulsive wanting and grasping, the fire of hatred, our aversion and pushing away, and the fire of delusion, our fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of reality. When the fuel for these fires, our clinging and craving, is no longer supplied, the fires themselves naturally die down. And what is left is not a cold, empty darkness, but a radiant, cool, and unshakable peace. It is essential to understand that nirvana is not a place. It is not a heavenly paradise that we go to after we die. It is not a reward for good behavior. It is a psychological state, a state of mind, that can be realized right here, in this very life, in this very body. It is the mind returned to its natural, pristine state, a state free from the tyranny of the monkey mind. It is not a state of emotional numbness or blank apathy. It is, in fact, the opposite. It is a state of heightened sensitivity and boundless openness, where one is able to experience the fullness of life, both its joys and its sorrows, without being enslaved by them. It is a state of profound clarity. where we see things exactly as they are, free from the distortions of our fears and desires. It is a state of unshakable calm, a peace that does not depend on whether things are going our way or not. And from this peace arises a deep and spontaneous compassion for all beings who are still caught in the flames of their own suffering. To experience nirvana is to experience the end of the second arrow. The first arrows of life, sickness, loss, and old age may still fly, but the second arrow of our own making, the arrow of resistance, resentment, and self-pity, is never fired again. Imagine your mind in its ordinary agitated state as a raging bonfire. The flames leap and crackle, casting frantic, dancing shadows. These flames are our greed, our anger, our jealousy, our anxiety. They consume our energy and obscure our vision. What fuels this bonfire? It is our constant habit of clinging and craving. Every time we grasp at a pleasant experience, wanting it to last forever, we throw another log on the fire. Every time we push away an unpleasant feeling, trying to deny or suppress it, we throw another log on the fire. Every time we get lost in a story about how things should be, we are adding more fuel. The path of wisdom is the gentle process of learning to stop feeding this fire. Through mindfulness, we begin to see the impulse to throw the log. We see the craving arise. We see the aversion arise. And by seeing it, we create that sacred pause. In that pause, we find the freedom not to act on it. We simply let the impulse be, without giving it more energy. And what happens to a fire when you stop adding fuel? You don't have to attack it. You don't have to pour water on it. It does not need to be fought. It simply, naturally, and gracefully dies down. The roaring flames subside into glowing embers, and the embers slowly fade. The smoke clears. And what remains is not an empty black hole, but a profound stillness, a vast open clarity, and a gentle, cooling peace. This is the peace of nirvana. It is not something we create, but something that is revealed when the obscuring fires of our own making have been allowed to burn out. This promise of peace does not mean that from that moment on, life becomes a perfect, challenge-free existence. This is a crucial understanding for us living in the modern world. The world will continue to be the world. The rains will fall, the storms will rage, people will act in ways that are confusing or hurtful, our bodies will age, and we will face loss. The first arrows are an inescapable part of the human condition. What changes is our inner vessel. A person who is governed by craving and aversion is like a tiny, rudderless boat on a vast ocean. Every small wave of fortune or misfortune tosses it about violently. It is unstable, vulnerable, and constantly at risk of capsizing. But a person who has touched this state of inner peace, who has realized Nirodha, is like the deep ocean itself. On the surface, the winds may blow and the waves may crash. There may be turbulence, activity, and storms. But in the depths, there is a profound stillness, a massive, unmoving calm that is untouched by the surface turmoil. This person can navigate the storms of life from a place of deep inner stability and wisdom. They are no longer at the mercy of every passing wave, because they have found a refuge within themselves that is deeper and more real than any external condition. The third noble truth, then, is the most hopeful and inspiring of teachings. It is the pivotal piece of the puzzle that transforms the Buddha's path from a somber analysis of suffering into a practical and optimistic roadmap to liberation. It confirms that the journey is worth taking, that our efforts to be more mindful, more compassionate, and more wise are not in vain. It tells us that peace is not a myth, not a distant fantasy reserved for saints in remote caves. It is a tangible, achievable, and verifiable reality. It is our own true nature waiting to be uncovered. The Buddha presented a diagnosis, dukkha. He explained its cause, tanha. And now he has confirmed the possibility of a complete cure, nirodha. This complete and logical framework naturally brings us to the final and most practical part of his teaching. The question that arises in the heart is now a practical one. How? How do we walk this path? What is the specific prescription that will take us from the raging fire of suffering to the cool peace of its cessation? This leads us directly to the fourth and final noble truth. the comprehensive guide to living a life of wisdom and peace, the Noble Eightfold Path. We have now arrived at the final and most practical of the Four Noble Truths. We have faced the diagnosis of dukkha, we have understood its cause in the thirst of tanha, and we have been given the profound hope of its cure, the promise of nirodha. The heart, filled with this hope, naturally asks the question, how? What is the actual, tangible path that leads from the shore of suffering to the shore of peace? The Buddha's answer to this question is the fourth noble truth, called Magga, the path itself. This is the famous Noble Eightfold Path, a complete and comprehensive design for living, a practical guide for the journey of awakening. It is not a set of rigid commandments to be followed out of fear, nor is it a collection of rituals. It is a set of 8 interconnected practices that, when cultivated together, systematically dismantle the causes of suffering and reveal the peace that lies within. Before walking the path, it is essential to understand its spirit. It is often called the middle way. This concept arose from the Buddha's own life experience. Before his enlightenment, as Prince Siddhartha, he had lived in a palace surrounded by every imaginable sensual pleasure. He knew the path of indulgence, and he found it shallow and unsatisfying, leading only to more craving. Later, as an ascetic, he practiced extreme self-mortification, starving his body and pushing it to its absolute limits, believing that punishing the body would liberate the spirit. He found this path of denial also led to a dead end, creating only weakness and a different kind of obsession. The profound insight that dawned on him was that the path to peace lay in a wise and balanced middle, avoiding both extremes. He compared it to tuning a lute or a sitar. If you tighten the string too much, it becomes shrill and eventually snaps. If you leave the string too loose, it produces no sound at all. But when tuned with just the right amount of tension, it creates beautiful, harmonious music. The Noble Eightfold Path is this perfectly tuned instrument. It is a path of diligence without tension, of relaxation without laziness. It is a path of balance, wisdom, and grace. The 8 factors of the path are not a sequence of linear steps, like rungs on a ladder that you climb one by one. They are more like the individual strands of a single strong rope. Each strand supports and is interwoven with all the others. They are meant to be developed simultaneously, each one enriching and deepening the rest. To make them easier to understand, they can be grouped into 3 essential pillars of training. The first is sila, which translates as ethical conduct. This is the foundation of the path concerning our words and our actions, our relationship with the outer world. The second is samadhi, or mental discipline. This concerns the training of our own mind, cultivating focus, calm, and awareness. The third is panya, or wisdom. This is the supreme fruit of the path, the clear seeing of reality as it truly is. Let us look briefly at each of the 8 factors within these 3 pillars. The path begins with the pillar of wisdom, because without some sense of the destination, we cannot take the first step. The first factor is right understanding, sometimes called right view. This is the compass for our journey. It means seeing the world and ourselves through the clear lens of the Four Noble Truths. It is the understanding that there is suffering, that it has a cause in our craving, that there can be an end to it, and that this eightfold path is the way to that end. It is the intellectual and intuitive grasp of the nature of reality that guides all our further efforts. The second factor is right intention, or right thought. Once we have the map, we must align our heart with the journey. Right intention is about consciously purifying the motives of our heart, steering them away from the forces of tanha. It involves cultivating 3 wholesome intentions: the intention of renunciation, which is the willingness to let go of our clinging; the intention of loving kindness, which is the wish for all beings to be happy; and the intention of harmlessness, a commitment to compassion and nonviolence in all our thoughts. The second pillar, ethical conduct, grounds our spiritual practice in our daily lives. It ensures that our journey inward does not cause harm outward. The third factor is right speech. This invites us to use our words wisely and compassionately. It means abstaining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against each other, from harsh or abusive speech, and from idle chatter that distracts the mind and wastes energy. Instead, we practice speaking words that are truthful, kind, helpful, and timely. The fourth factor is right action. This concerns our bodily actions. It is the practice of abstaining from killing or harming any living being, from taking what is not freely given, and from engaging in sexual conduct that is exploitative or harmful to ourselves or others. It is about living in a way that respects the life and well-being of all. The fifth factor is right livelihood. This means choosing a way to earn a living that does not cause harm and that, if possible, is helpful to others. It is the practice of avoiding professions based on deception, exploitation, or the trade in weapons, intoxicants, or living beings. It is about integrating our ethics into our economic life, ensuring that our work is not in conflict with our values. The third and final pillar is mental discipline, the direct training of the mind. The sixth factor is right effort. This is the gentle but persistent energy we apply to our inner world. It is not a forceful, aggressive effort, but a wise and balanced application of our will. It has four aspects: the effort to prevent unwholesome thoughts and emotions from arising, the effort to abandon them if they have already arisen, the effort to cultivate wholesome states of mind like kindness and generosity, and the effort to maintain those wholesome states that are already present. The seventh factor is right mindfulness. This is the heart of the mental training, connecting back to our earlier discussions. It is the practice of maintaining a continuous, non-judgmental awareness of our body, our feelings, our mind, and the fundamental principles of reality. It is the anchor and the lamp that illuminates the entire path. And finally, the eighth factor is right concentration. As right mindfulness is cultivated with right effort, the mind becomes naturally more calm and focused. Right concentration is the ability to unify the mind, to rest it upon a single object of meditation, leading to deep states of tranquility and clarity. It is the state of a mind that is steady, strong, and sharp, a mind that is capable of penetrating the deepest truths of existence. These 8 strands weave together to create a complete, holistic, and integrated way of life. Right understanding gives us the vision for right action. Right speech helps to purify the mind, making right concentration easier. Right effort supports our ability to maintain right mindfulness. Each part is essential to the whole, creating a virtuous cycle that spirals us gently upward toward greater peace, wisdom, and compassion. This path is not a rigid dogma, but a fluid and dynamic process of cultivation. It is a lifelong journey of learning and growing. The very foundation of this entire structure, the first step that informs all others, is right understanding. And one of the most fundamental components of right understanding, a truth we must see clearly to make any progress at all, is to penetrate the illusion of permanence. It is the wisdom of seeing the world not as a collection of static, solid things, but as it truly is, a vast, interconnected, and ever-changing river of processes. This leads us to a deeper contemplation of the profound truth of impermanence. As we begin to walk the Noble Eightfold Path, our first and most crucial task is to cultivate right understanding, to see the world not as we wish it were, but as it truly is. And one of the most fundamental, unavoidable, and ultimately liberating truths of our existence is the truth of impermanence. In the Pali language, this is known as anicca. It is not a grim philosophy or a depressing doctrine. It is a simple, observable fact. Everything changes, nothing lasts. Look around you. The seasons turn, day fades into night. The clouds drift across the sky. The solid mountain is slowly being worn down by wind and rain. The flower that bloomed this morning will wilt and return to the earth. We see this constant flux in the world outside of us, but the real challenge and the real freedom lies in recognizing this same truth within our own being. We tend to operate under the deep, unspoken assumption that while the world changes, we are somehow a fixed, solid entity at the center of it all. The wisdom of Anika invites us to examine this assumption with gentle, honest curiosity. We can explore this truth on several levels of our own experience. First, there is the most obvious level, the impermanence of our physical world and our own bodies. The car we cherish will one day rust. The home we build will eventually decay. Our possessions, no matter how precious, are all subject to time. And more intimately, our own body is in a constant state of process. The body you have today is not the same body you had 7 years ago. Science tells us that nearly every cell has been replaced. You are not a static statue. You are a river of biological processes. We grow from infancy to childhood to adulthood and into old age. This is not a tragedy, it is the nature of life. Yet, we often live in resistance to this reality, clinging to youth, fearing age, and becoming distressed when our physical form inevitably changes. This resistance is a primary source of our anxiety. Deeper still is the impermanence of our mind. Our mindfulness practice becomes a laboratory for observing this directly. Sit for just a few minutes and watch the flow of your inner world. A thought about work appears, unbidden. It stays for a moment, and then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes, replaced by a memory from childhood. Then a feeling of boredom arises, which is quickly followed by a sensation of hunger. A wave of joy can come and go in a matter of minutes, as can a wave of irritation or sadness. Our moods, our emotions, our thoughts are as fickle and changeable as the weather. Yet, what do? We cling desperately to the pleasant states. When we feel happy, we grasp at it, saying, "This is what I want, this is me," and we feel a subtle anxiety that it might slip away. When an unpleasant feeling like sadness or anger arises, we push it away, we resist it, declaring, "This isn't me, I don't want this." This act of grasping at the pleasant and pushing away the unpleasant is a futile struggle against the nature of the mind. It is like trying to command the clouds to stand still in the sky. The suffering comes not from the changing states themselves, but from our struggle against their very nature. At the most profound level of observation, we can see that our entire experience of reality is nothing but a stream of momentary events arising and passing away with incredible speed. Our consciousness is not a continuous, solid thing. It is a rapid succession of single moments of seeing, hearing, tasting, thinking, and feeling, flashing in and out of existence. From this perspective, we are not a noun, we are a verb. We are not a being, but a constant process of becoming. This can sound frightening, as it dissolves our cherished idea of a solid, continuous self, but it is the gateway to immense freedom. If we are a process, we are not defined by any single moment. We are not our anger. We are not our sadness. We are not our failures. These are just temporary events flowing through a vast, open awareness. There is a classic Zen story that wonderfully illustrates the wisdom of embracing this constant flow, a story of an old farmer and his horse. One day, the farmer's only horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying, "Oh, what terrible luck." The farmer simply replied, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" A week later, his horse returned, and it brought with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors gathered again, this time to congratulate him. "What incredible good luck!" they exclaimed. The farmer, with a calm expression, said, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off, and his leg was badly broken. The neighbors came once more, shaking their heads. "How awful! Your son is injured. This is truly bad luck." The farmer just looked at them and said, "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows?" Few weeks passed, and the emperor's army came to the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a war they were fighting in a distant province, a war from which few would return. Because the farmer's son had a broken leg, he was the only young man in the village who was spared. The neighbors, overwhelmed with relief and awe, came to the farmer. "You were right all along," they said. "Your son was saved. It was the greatest of good luck." The farmer, gazing at the horizon, smiled gently. "Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows? This story teaches us that our judgments of good and bad are based on a frozen snapshot in time, a single frame in a movie that is constantly unfolding. We label events without knowing what they will lead to next. Anika teaches us to hold these labels lightly, to meet life with a sense of open, curious wonder rather than rigid certainty. It invites us to participate in the dance of life without trying to force the music to stop on our favorite note. This understanding radically transforms our relationship with the present moment. Instead of being a means to an end, the moment becomes incredibly precious, precisely because it is fleeting. We don't love a beautiful sunset despite the fact that it is fading. We love it, in part, because it is fading. Its transient beauty calls us to be fully present, to drink it in, because it will never be exactly this way again. Impermanence is not a curse. It is the secret ingredient that gives life its poignancy and its beauty. And this same truth is our greatest source of hope in times of pain. Because everything changes, our sorrow is also impermanent. Our despair is not a permanent state. Our anxiety will not last forever. No matter how dark the storm, the clouds will eventually part. This is not wishful thinking. It is the fundamental law of existence. Anika is the ultimate antidote to despair. So, if we can accept this truth, if we can begin to see that everything in our inner and outer world is like the ever-flowing river, always in motion, never the same from one moment to the next, what is the only sane and peaceful response? It cannot be to build a dam, to try and stop the flow. It cannot be to grasp at the water, trying to hold it in our fists. That way leads only to frustration, exhaustion, and a constant battle with reality. The only wise response is to learn to relax our grip, to open our hand, and to allow the river of life to flow freely through us and around us. This deep, intuitive understanding of impermanence leads us directly and logically to the next great practice on our path, the profound and liberating art of letting go. The law of impermanence, Anika, has shown us that our entire reality, both within and without, is an ever-flowing river. To stand in this river and try to hold the water in our fists is the very definition of struggle. To see this truth clearly, to feel it in our bones, leads to the only sane and peaceful response, the cultivation of the gentle, liberating, and profound art of letting go. In the Buddhist tradition, this is connected to the concept of nekkhamma, often translated as renunciation. But for many of us, that word sounds harsh, suggesting a life of bleak denial. It is more helpful to think of it as non-attachment, as the wisdom of unclenching the fist. It is not about abandoning the world, but about abandoning our painful and futile clinging to the world. It is not about feeling nothing, but about freeing ourselves from being controlled by our feelings. It is the discovery that true joy and freedom are not found in grasping and holding on, but in the graceful and courageous act of letting go. So what exactly are we invited to let go of? The practice begins with our relationship to the future, by letting go of our attachment to outcomes. We live in a culture that is intensely goal-oriented. We believe that our happiness depends on achieving a specific result, a promotion, a successful project, a particular kind of relationship. We pour our effort into our work, which is right and wholesome, but then we tie our entire sense of well-being to the outcome. When things don't go according to our plan, as they so often don't in this unpredictable world, we suffer. The wisdom of letting go teaches us to find joy and meaning in the process itself. Like a skilled archer, we can focus all our attention on choosing the right arrow, nocking it correctly, and releasing it with a steady hand. But once the arrow has flown, it is subject to the wind and 1,000 other conditions beyond our control. We learn to pour our heart into our actions and then to release our grip on the results, meeting whatever comes with a sense of equanimity and grace. We are also invited to let go of our attachment to the opinions of others. So much of our daily anxiety, our mental chatter, revolves around worrying what other people think of us. We carefully curate an image, a persona, that we present to the world, and we live in a state of low-grade fear that someone will see behind the mask, or that they will judge us and find us lacking. We are clinging to a ghost, an idea of ourselves that exists only in the minds of other people, something we can never truly see or control. Letting go in this context is an act of profound self-respect. It is the realization that our true worth is not a reflection in the eyes of others, but an inherent quality within. We learn to act from our own values, to speak our own truth with kindness, and to find a stable sense of well-being that is not dependent on external praise or blame. Perhaps most importantly, we are invited to let go of the past. Our minds so often resemble museums of old grievances. We walk through the halls, pausing to gaze at past hurts, polishing old resentments, rereading the stories of how we were wronged. The Buddha said that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Letting go of these past hurts is not about condoning another's harmful actions or pretending they didn't happen. It is a profound act of self-compassion. It is the recognition that by carrying this burning coal, we are only poisoning our present moment. Letting go is about putting the coal down, not for their sake, but for ours, so that our hands are free to hold the peace and beauty of the now. This also applies to our attachments to old identities. We cling to stories of who we used to be, I was so much happier then, or limiting beliefs about who we are now, I am just not a patient person. Impermanence teaches us that we are not a fixed entity. Letting go of these rigid self-concepts allows us to be open, to grow, and to meet each new moment with fresh eyes. There is a beautiful Taoist story that perfectly illustrates how our attachments, especially our ideas about others, are the true source of our disturbances. Imagine you are sitting in a small rowboat, enjoying the quiet stillness of a misty morning on a lake. It is a moment of pure peace. Suddenly, with a loud thud, another boat crashes into the side of yours. Your peace is shattered. A flash of anger rises up within you. You turn, ready to shout at the careless person who has ruined your tranquility. But as you look, you see that the boat is empty. It simply broke free from its moorings on the shore and drifted into you. In that instant, what happens to your anger? It vanishes completely. You can't be angry at an empty boat. You might feel a flicker of annoyance at the situation, but the hot, personal anger is gone. You simply push the empty boat away and return to your quiet contemplation. The wisdom of this story is profound. The event itself, the bump, was the same in both scenarios. It was a neutral first arrow. The anger, the second arrow of our suffering, only arose when you created a story, the story of someone in the other boat, a careless perpetrator who had intentionally wronged me, the victim. Our anger was not caused by the bump. It was caused by our clinging to this story of self and other. When we saw the boat was empty, the story collapsed, and the anger dissolved with it. So much of our daily frustration, our anger, our resentment, is directed at what we perceive to be occupied boats. A person cuts us off in traffic. A colleague sends a curt email. A partner says something thoughtless. We immediately assume intent. We create a story, and we suffer. The practice of letting go is the practice of learning to see more and more boats as empty. It is the wisdom of seeing that other people's actions are often the result of their own unskillful navigation, their own inner storms, and are not a personal attack on us. It is the freedom of not taking everything so personally. When we practice letting go, it is not an act of losing something, it is an act of creating space. When our minds and hearts are cluttered, clenched tightly around our expectations, our grievances, and our rigid ideas, there is no room for peace to enter. There is no room for new life, new insights, or new joy. Letting go is like tidying a room that has been messy for years. As we clear out the old clutter, we are surprised by how much open space there is. A sense of lightness, of freedom, of possibility begins to emerge. Peace is not something we need to acquire or build. It is our natural state. It is what remains when we have let go of all the things that are obscuring it. It is the quiet, spacious room that is always there, waiting for us to clear out the junk. This journey of letting go, of unclenching our fists from the things of the world, from outcomes, from opinions, from our past inevitably, leads our inquiry to a deeper, more fundamental question. We have been so focused on the things we are clinging to, but what about the one who's doing the clinging? What is this self, this me that we have been working so hard to protect, to defend, and to satisfy? The story of the empty boat teaches us that our anger dissolves when we see there is no malicious other to blame. What might happen if we turn that same curious, honest gaze upon our own boat? What happens when we begin to investigate the very nature of the clinger itself? This is the next great step on the path, a step that takes us from letting go of things to questioning the very existence of a solid, separate self that is doing the holding. The art of letting go has guided us to unclench our fists from the past and the future, from the opinions of others, and from the outcomes we cannot control. This practice inevitably leads our investigation to its most profound and intimate subject. We have been examining the things the self clings to, but now we turn the gentle light of our awareness upon the clinger itself. What is this I that stands at the center of our universe? What is this self that we work so tirelessly to protect, to promote, and to please? The exploration of this question leads us to the central insight of the Buddhist path, a teaching called anatta, or not self. This may be the most challenging and ultimately the most liberating of all the teachings we will explore. The phrase no self can sound frightening, like a declaration of our own annihilation. But this is a misunderstanding. The teaching of anatta is not saying that you do not exist. It is saying that you do not exist as a separate, solid, permanent, independent entity. It is a gentle correction of a deeply held case of mistaken identity. To understand this, we are invited to become detectives, to conduct a quiet investigation into our own direct experience. The Buddha suggested we look at ourselves as a combination of 5 distinct processes known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. We look at each one and ask a simple question: is this my true, unchanging self? First, there is the aggregate of form. This is our physical body with all its parts and functions. Is this body myself? At first, we might say yes, but as we have seen, the body is a prime example of impermanence. It is constantly changing, aging, getting sick, and will one day pass away. It is made of components that are not me, the food we ate, the water we drank, the air we breathe. It is a biological process, not a permanent entity. So, the body cannot be our true, unchanging self. Second, there is the aggregate of sensation or feeling. This includes all our pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings. Is our happiness our self? Is our sadness our self? These feelings are even more fleeting and unreliable than our body. They are like guests who arrive at our door unannounced and leave whenever they please. We have very little control over them. A feeling of joy arises, and then it is gone. A wave of anger washes over us, and then it subsides. To identify ourselves with these transient emotional weather patterns would be to build our house on a constantly shifting cloud. So, our feelings cannot be our true, unchanging self. Third, we look at perception. This is the faculty of our mind that recognizes, labels, and conceptualizes the world. It is the part of the mind that says tree, blue, car, danger. Are these perceptions our self? Our perceptions are deeply conditioned by our past experiences, our language, our culture, and our beliefs. The way one person perceives a situation can be completely different from another. They are not a pure reflection of reality, but an interpretation. They are learned and impermanent processes. So, our perceptions cannot be our true, unchanging self. Fourth, we come to the vast category of mental formations. This includes all of our thoughts, our beliefs, our opinions, our intentions, our memories, our habits, our ambitions, our fears. This is the chattering of the monkey mind. Is this ourself? We have already seen how chaotic, contradictory, and uncontrollable these mental events can be. A thought appears from nowhere and vanishes just as quickly. To claim this stream of mental noise as our self would be like claiming the static on a radio is the announcer. These formations are just patterns of energy, conditioned by countless previous causes. They are not a solid, trustworthy self. Finally, we look at consciousness. This is the raw faculty of awareness itself, the basic knowing of an experience. There is eye consciousness, which knows sights. There is ear consciousness, which knows sounds. Is this pure awareness our self? The Buddha pointed out that consciousness is always dependent on an object. It does not exist on its own. Eye consciousness arises only because there is a sight to be seen and an eye to see it. It is not an independent, abiding soul that exists separately from experience. It too is part of the flow. After we have investigated all 5 of these categories that make up our entire personal experience, we are left with a startling conclusion. We cannot find a solid, independent, unchanging self anywhere. There is no CEO in the command center. There is no little person inside our head pulling the levers. I, me, and mine are simply convenient labels we apply to the dynamic, interdependent, and ever-changing flow of these 5 processes. This can seem abstract, so a famous story from the Buddhist text makes it beautifully clear. A wise Greek king named Melinda, who was a great intellectual, came to challenge a humble Buddhist sage named Nagasena. After the initial greetings, King Melinda asked for the sage's name. Nagasena replied, "I am known as Nagasena, Your Majesty, but this is only a designation, a name for a collection of parts. There is no permanent person here to be found." The king was amused by this clever answer and decided to challenge him. Pointing to the magnificent chariot he had arrived in, he asked, "If you are just a name, then what is this chariot? Is the chariot the wheels?" Nagasena replied, "No, Your Majesty." "Is it the axle?" "No, Your Majesty." "Is it the frame, the reins, the whip?" With each question, Nagasena calmly answered no. The king laughed triumphantly. "Then, venerable sir, you are speaking a falsehood. There is no chariot." At this point, the humble Nagasena turned the questioning back on the king. "Your Majesty, you are a noble king. How did you arrive here? On foot or in a vehicle?" The king replied that he had come in his chariot. "Then," Nagasena said, "tell me what a chariot is. You have said it is not the wheels, nor the axle, nor the reins. Then what is it?" The king was speechless. Nagasena concluded gently, "Your Majesty, it is on account of the wheels and the axle and the frame and the reins, all assembled and working together, that we have the name, the concept, the convenient designation, chariot." He then brought the lesson home. "In exactly the same way, Your Majesty, it is on account of the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the mental formations, and consciousness that we have the convenient designation Nagasena, or self. M, the realization of anatta, of not self, is the ultimate act of letting go. We let go of the very thing we were clinging to most tightly, the idea of a fixed and separate me. And what is the result of this? Not fear, not nothingness, but incredible freedom. Think of how much of our energy is spent defending the ego, polishing its image, and fearing for its survival. We fear failure because it threatens the self. We fear criticism because it attacks the self. We fear death because it is the ultimate annihilation of the self. We feel pride, jealousy, and ambition all in service of this self. When we see, even for a moment, that this self is more like a process than an entity, more like a verb than a noun, the entire structure of our anxiety begins to crumble. The burden of being me becomes lighter. We can begin to move through the world with more ease, more playfulness, and less fear. We stop taking ourselves so incredibly seriously. When the hard, imaginary walls of the separate self begin to dissolve, something beautiful and unexpected happens. We start to see that the divisions between me and you, between us and them, are also part of the illusion. If I am a process, and you are a process, then we are both part of the same vast, interconnected flow of life. Your joy is not entirely separate from my joy. Your suffering is not entirely separate from my suffering. The illusion of separation is the root of all conflict and indifference. The wisdom of anatta, the insight into our shared, fluid nature, is the fertile ground from which true, boundless compassion naturally springs. It is the realization that to love another is, in the deepest sense, to love ourselves. The profound insight into anatta, not self, gently dissolves the imaginary walls that we build between ourselves and the world. As the illusion of a solid, separate self begins to fade, a sense of our deep interconnectedness with all of life naturally arises. We see that we are not isolated islands, but waves in a single, vast ocean of existence. This realization is the fertile soil from which the seeds of true compassion begin to sprout. The first and most fundamental expression of this open heart is a quality known as metta. This beautiful Pali word is often translated as loving kindness. It is a gentle, unconditional, and boundless friendliness, a sincere and simple wish for all beings to be happy and well. This is not the conditional love of our songs and stories, which is so often transactional, an exchange based on attraction, shared interests, or what someone can do for us. Metta is a radiant warmth that asks for nothing in return. It is a love that flows outward, not because a being is worthy of it, but simply because they exist. It is not a feeling we must wait for, but a skill we can actively cultivate, a spring of kindness we can nurture within our own heart. The formal practice for developing this quality is called metta bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. It is a gentle and systematic meditation that stretches the muscle of our heart. Traditionally, the practice unfolds in 5 stages, beginning with the person who is often the most difficult for us to love, ourselves. We are often our own harshest critics, speaking to ourselves with a level of judgment and cruelty we would never direct at a friend. But you cannot pour from an empty cup. To offer genuine kindness to others, we must first learn to be a friend to ourselves. So, we begin by silently offering these wishes to our own being. You can find a comfortable posture, and with each gentle breath, repeat these phrases in your mind. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be safe. May I live with ease. In the beginning, you may not feel anything. You may even feel resistance or disbelief. That is perfectly normal. The practice is not about forcing a feeling, but about planting the seed of intention. With patience and repetition, you are watering that seed, tending to the soil of your own heart. Once you have spent some time offering this kindness to yourself, the second stage is to bring to mind a dear friend or a benefactor, someone for whom you feel natural warmth and gratitude. It could be a family member, a mentor, or even a beloved pet. Picture them clearly in your mind, and with the same sincerity, extend the phrases to them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. Notice how easily the heart opens for this person. Allow yourself to bask in that feeling of simple, uncomplicated affection. This stage helps us recognize the feeling of metta in its most natural form. The third stage is to bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you have no strong feelings either way. The clerk at the grocery store, the person who delivers your mail, a coworker you don't know well. Hold their image in your mind and extend the very same wishes to them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. This is a crucial step. It begins to break down the artificial barriers of our preferences. It extends the circle of our care beyond those who directly benefit us, recognizing the simple truth that this person, just like us, wants to be happy and free from suffering. The fourth stage is the most challenging and perhaps the most transformative. Here, we are invited to bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict or for whom we feel resentment or anger. This requires great care and is not to be forced. The purpose here is not to condone their harmful actions or to pretend that what happened was okay. It is a profound act of inner liberation, recognizing that this person's unskillful actions likely come from their own deep suffering and confusion. We gently, and perhaps with some difficulty at first, offer them the same wish. May you find peace. May you be free from the anger and pain that causes you to suffer. In doing this, we are not freeing them from responsibility. We are freeing ourselves from the poison of carrying hatred in our own heart. We are putting down the hot coal. Finally, in the fifth stage, We let the circle of loving kindness expand to become boundless. We radiate this feeling outward from our heart in all directions, to our family, our friends, our neighbors, our community, our country. We extend it to all beings on this planet, human and animal, large and small. We send it to beings in other realms, seen and unseen. We hold the entire universe in our heart and offer the simple, powerful wish, may all beings everywhere be happy, may all beings be safe, may all beings live with ease. This practice, over time, can fundamentally change our default relationship to the world, shifting it from one of suspicion and fear to one of open-hearted friendliness. Metta is the direct and powerful antidote to the poisons of the mind. When the heart is filled with genuine loving kindness, there is no room for anger, ill will, or resentment. The two states are mutually exclusive, like light and darkness. When you turn on the light of metta, the darkness of hatred naturally dissipates. It is also the antidote to fear. Fear arises from the illusion of separation, the feeling of being a vulnerable self in a hostile world. Metta dissolves this separation, fostering a sense of connection, safety, and kinship with all life. It softens the hard edges of the ego, making us less reactive, more patient, and more resilient in the face of life's challenges. It is a powerful shield of the heart. There is a dramatic story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates the incredible power of metta. The Buddha's jealous and ambitious cousin, Devadatta, tried many times to usurp his position, and failing that, he plotted to kill him. One of his plots involved arranging for the fierce wild elephant named Nalagiri to be intoxicated with palm wine and set loose on the narrow road where the Buddha would be walking. When the enraged elephant was released, it charged down the road in a terrifying rampage. People screamed and fled in panic. Even the Buddha's closest disciples urged him to run and save himself. But the Buddha remained perfectly still, his posture calm and his face serene. He turned his full attention toward the raging animal and radiated a powerful, palpable energy of pure, unconditional, loving kindness. He looked at the elephant not as a threat, but as a suffering being, confused and in pain. As the elephant entered the field of the Buddha's metta, a strange thing happened. It slowed its charge. The frenzied look in its eyes softened. The rage seemed to drain away from its massive body. It became calm, walked peacefully up to the Buddha, and knelt before him, allowing the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. The story shows that metta is not a weak, sentimental feeling. It is a real and potent force, a spiritual energy that has the power to tame the most violent rage, both in the world around us and, more importantly, within our own hearts. Each of us has a raging elephant inside, the elephant of our own anger, our fear, our jealousy. Metta is the gentle hand that can soothe it. It is vital to remember that the practice of loving kindness is not primarily about manufacturing a specific emotion. It is about cultivating a steadfast intention. Some days when we practice, we may feel a beautiful warmth flooding our heart. On other days, we may feel nothing at all. Both are perfectly fine. The success of the practice does not depend on the presence of a feeling, but on the sincerity and consistency of our intention, our gentle, unwavering wish for the well-being of ourselves and others. We are simply setting the compass of our heart again and again toward the direction of kindness. This sincere wish for all beings to be happy and to have the causes of future happiness is the first great flowering of the compassionate heart. But our journey through the world does not just present us with beings who we wish happiness for in the future. It presents us every day with beings who are actively suffering right now. When our heart, softened and opened by metta, encounters this present moment reality of pain, a different, though deeply related, quality is called for. This is the heart's active response to suffering. This is the quivering of the heart in the face of pain. This is the path of compassion. The gentle, open heart cultivated by metta, by loving kindness, is a heart that wishes happiness for all beings. It is a beautiful and radiant state. But as we walk through the world with this newly softened heart, we inevitably encounter the first noble truth in the lives of others. We see their pain, their struggles, their sorrows. When the warmth of metta meets the reality of suffering, it transforms into something deeper, more active, and more resonant. It becomes karuna, the second of the great abodes of the heart, which we can translate as compassion. If metta is the wish, may you be happy. Karuna is the wish. May you be free from your suffering. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of pain, a profound empathy that is not content to stand by, but yearns to help, to alleviate, to soothe. It is the natural response of our shared humanity when we see another part of ourselves in distress. It is crucial to understand what compassion is and what it is not. In our language, we often confuse it with a near enemy, a quality that looks similar on the surface but is fundamentally different in its heart. The near enemy of compassion is pity. Pity looks down from above. When we feel pity, we create a separation between ourselves and the other person. We stand on our own solid ground of being okay, and we look down at the poor person who is not. There is a subtle condescension in pity, a reinforcement of the ego that says, I am glad I am not you. While it may appear sympathetic, pity actually creates distance. Compassion, on the other hand, closes the distance. It meets the other person on the same level, recognizing that their suffering is not foreign, but is part of the human condition that we all share. It comes from a place of humility and solidarity, the quiet understanding that I too have known pain. I too am vulnerable. Pity says, you are suffering. Compassion says, we suffer. It is the difference between looking at someone from across a divide and standing beside them, offering the silent comfort of shared presence. There is another, perhaps more common, pitfall in our modern understanding of compassion, and that is to confuse it with empathic distress, or what is sometimes called idiot compassion. This is the state of being so overwhelmed by another's pain that we become paralyzed by it. We see a friend in grief, and we become so distraught ourselves that we are no good to them. We read about a tragedy in the world and fall into a state of anxiety and helplessness. We have taken on the suffering of another as our own, and now we are both drowning. This is not karuna. True compassion has two wings, a soft one and a strong one. The soft wing is the tender heart that feels with another, the empathy that allows us to connect. But the strong wing is the wisdom and mental stability that keeps us grounded. Wise compassion understands that drowning alongside someone does not help them. The truly compassionate response is to stand firmly on the riverbank of our own well-being and skillfully throw them a rope. It is the ability to feel the pain of the world without being destroyed by it. It is a heart that is both tender and resilient, both soft and strong. In the rich iconography of Mahayana Buddhism, the ideal of compassion is embodied in the magnificent figure of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva who hears the cries of the world. A bodhisattva is a being who has reached the brink of full enlightenment but makes a profound vow to postpone their own final peace and remain in the world to help all other beings find freedom from suffering. The origin story of Avalokiteshvara is a powerful parable about the nature of true compassion. It is said that as he looked down upon the world, he was so utterly moved by the sheer scale of suffering, the endless cries of beings in pain, that his heart broke and his head shattered into 11 pieces. The Buddha of boundless light, Amitabha, saw his plight and reassembled his head, giving him 11 heads so that he could better perceive the suffering in all directions. Avalokiteshvara then tried to reach out and help all those who were suffering, but his two arms were not enough. He worked so hard that his arms too shattered into pieces. Again, Amitabha came to his aid, this time bestowing upon him 1,000 arms, and in the palm of each hand an eye. This is not a literal story, but a profound metaphor for the qualities of wise compassion. The 11 heads represent the ability to perceive suffering from all angles, to understand it deeply and without judgment. The 1,000 arms represent the boundless, active capacity to help, the skillful means to respond to any situation, and the eye in the palm of each hand represents the crucial element of wisdom. Compassion is not blind. It does not just act for the sake of acting. It sees clearly what is truly needed in each unique situation. Avalokiteshvara embodies a compassion that is not overwhelmed by the world's pain, but responds to it with infinite, wise, and tireless energy. Karuna is not a passive state of sadness. It is this active, wise, and courageous engagement with suffering. One of the most practical ways we can cultivate this quality in our daily lives is to practice looking for the suffering behind the unskillful actions of others. When someone speaks to us with anger, our immediate reaction is to become defensive or angry in return. But the practice of compassion invites us to pause, to take a breath, and to ask a different question. What pain is causing this person to act this way? Anger is almost always a mask for fear or hurt. When someone is arrogant, they are often hiding a deep-seated insecurity. When someone is greedy, they are often trying to fill an inner emptiness. This does not mean we condone or accept harmful behavior. We can still set clear boundaries, but it completely changes our inner response. We shift from judgment and reactivity to a state of understanding and care. We see not a monster, but a suffering human being trapped in their own patterns. Our wish for them changes from, "I hope you get what you deserve," to, "I hope you can be free from the suffering that is causing you to create more suffering for yourself and others." This is the beginning of a profound inner peace. This practice of extending compassion outward to all beings, even those we find difficult, is a noble and transformative path. It breaks down the walls of our own small world and connects us to the heart of humanity. Yet for so many of us, there is one person we habitually exclude from this circle of kindness. There is one person whose flaws we judge most harshly, whose mistakes we refuse to forgive, and whose suffering we often ignore or dismiss. That person is ourselves. The journey of compassion is incomplete until it learns to turn inward, to offer that same tender, understanding, and forgiving presence to our own imperfect being. This can be the most difficult journey of all, but it is also the most essential, for it is only when we learn to be a true friend to ourselves that we can be a sustainable source of strength and kindness for the world. The path of compassion, karuna, guides us to open our hearts to the suffering of all beings. We learn to look upon the world with a tender, empathetic gaze, wishing for all to be free from their pain. We practice seeing the fear behind the anger of others, the insecurity behind their pride. This outward flowing compassion is a beautiful, world-changing force, and yet, for so many of us on this path, there is one direction in which the stream of kindness finds itself blocked by a dam of relentless judgment. There is one person we refuse to forgive for their mistakes, whose imperfections we magnify, and whose inner critic we empower every single day. That person, so often, is ourselves. The journey of compassion is not truly whole until it completes its circle, until it flows back inward to embrace the flawed, struggling, and imperfectly beautiful being that is our own self. This practice of self-compassion is not an optional extra. It is the very foundation upon which a sustainable life of wisdom and kindness must be built. Why is this so difficult? Why do we find it easier to offer comfort to a friend who has failed than to offer that same comfort to ourselves? From a young age, many of us have been conditioned to believe that self-criticism is a virtue. We carry within us a harsh inner narrator, a voice that constantly points out our flaws, replays our embarrassing moments, and compares us unfavorably to others. We believe this voice is our motivator, that if we are not hard on ourselves, we will become lazy, complacent, and indulgent. We are afraid to be kind to ourselves for fear that we will lose our edge. And so, we live in a state of quiet, internal warfare, believing it is for our own good, all the while wondering why we feel so anxious, so tired, and so afraid of making a mistake. True self-compassion is the radical antidote to this inner critic, and it is crucial to understand what it is and what it is not. It is not self-pity, it is not self-indulgence, and it is not a sign of weakness. The pioneering researcher Dr. Kristin Neff breaks it down into three core components. The first is self-kindness. This is the simple act of treating ourselves with the same care and understanding that we would offer to a dear friend. When a friend comes to you after having made a terrible mistake, you likely don't berate them and list all their faults. You might offer them a hug, a cup of tea, and gentle words of comfort. It's okay. You're only human. You did the best you could. Self-kindness is about learning to turn this same voice inward. When you fail, when you feel inadequate, instead of attacking yourself, you learn to pause and offer yourself a moment of warmth and unconditional acceptance. The second component is a sense of common humanity. When we fail or suffer, our inner critic loves to tell us a story of isolation. I am the only one who feels this way. Everyone else has their life together. Something is uniquely wrong with me. This feeling of separation is a profound source of shame. Self-compassion reminds us of a simple and liberating truth. To be human is to be imperfect. Failure, difficulty, and pain are not signs that we are flawed. They are signs that we are members of the human race. Just as Kisa Gotami walked from house to house and discovered that loss was the shared inheritance of all people, we too can recognize that our struggles, our insecurities, and our mistakes connect us to others rather than setting us apart. Realizing that you are not alone in your imperfection is a powerful antidote to shame. The third component is mindfulness. This is the balanced awareness that we have been cultivating all along. It allows us to hold our own painful feelings in a spacious and compassionate presence. We don't ignore our pain or suppress it, which would be unkind, but we also don't get lost in it. When we are caught in a storm of self-criticism, it is easy to become completely identified with the story, "I am a failure." Mindfulness allows us to take a step back and see the situation with more clarity. We can acknowledge, there is a feeling of disappointment here. There are thoughts of failure arising in the mind. We are not the storm. We are the sky that holds the storm. This mindful awareness prevents us from being swept away by the drama, allowing us to respond to our own suffering with wisdom and balance. When we combine these three elements, self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, we discover that self-compassion is not weakness, but a source of incredible strength. The fear of self-criticism often makes us afraid to even try challenging things because the price of failure is so high. But when we know that we will be met with kindness and understanding if we fail, we develop the courage and resilience to take risks, to learn, and to grow. We can pick ourselves up after a fall, dust ourselves off, and try again, not because we are afraid of being punished, but because we are motivated by a genuine desire to learn and to be well. Furthermore, self-compassion is the bedrock of genuine compassion for others. If we are constantly at war with ourselves, any kindness we offer to the world will be strained and unsustainable. It is like trying to water a garden with a cracked and empty bucket. We will eventually suffer from burnout, resentment, and a feeling of depletion. When we learn to fill our own cup first, when we treat ourselves as a worthy recipient of our own kindness, our compassion for others becomes a natural and effortless overflow. It is no longer a duty, but a spontaneous expression of a heart that is at peace with itself. Central to this is the practice of self-forgiveness. We learn to apply the art of letting go to the mistakes and regrets we hold against ourselves. We acknowledge our past actions, we learn from them, but we release ourselves from the life sentence of shame and self-recrimination. We give ourselves the gift of a fresh start, a gift we can offer ourselves in every single moment. There is a powerful image from the story of the Buddha's enlightenment that embodies this deep self-acceptance. After years of striving, as he sat beneath the Bodhi tree on the verge of awakening, he was assailed by the figure of Mara, the personification of all the doubt, temptation, and fear in his own mind. Mara challenged him, asking, "By what right do you claim this seat of enlightenment? Who is your witness?" The Buddha did not engage in a lengthy debate. He did not call upon the gods or any external authority for validation. Silently, he reached down with his right hand and touched the earth. And it is said that the great earth itself roared, "I am your witness." This simple, profound gesture was an act of ultimate self-trust. He found his legitimacy not in some outside source, but in the simple, solid reality of his own being and his own journey through countless lifetimes of effort. He was calling on the fundamental truth of his own existence to be his witness. We too can learn to touch the earth of our own being, to trust in our fundamental goodness, and to know that we belong here in this life just as we are imperfections and all, with a heart that has learned to be a friend to itself and a friend to others, we are now far better equipped to navigate the inevitable challenges of life. Our compassion is no longer a fragile sentiment, but a deep and resilient source of strength. This strength is essential, for the world will inevitably present us with people and situations that test our patience and our peace. The next step on our path is to learn how to bring this compassionate wisdom into our encounters with conflict and difficulty, transforming our greatest challenges into our greatest opportunities for growth. With a heart fortified by compassion for ourselves and for others, we are now ready to face one of the most common and potent challenges on the spiritual path: our interactions with difficult people and conflict situations. In our ordinary state of mind, we see these people as antagonists, as obstacles to our happiness and peace. We blame them for our frustration, our anger, and our stress. But from the perspective of wisdom, these individuals are transformed. They are no longer our adversaries. They become our greatest and most challenging teachers. A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. In the same way, a life devoid of friction would give us no opportunity to temper our own minds and hearts. The difficult person, the one who pushes our buttons and triggers our deepest insecurities, is like a spiritual sandpaper. They reveal to us, with perfect clarity, where our practice is still weak, where our ego is still tender, and where we are still caught in the chains of reactivity. They are an invaluable gift, an opportunity to put our practice to the real-world test. When we are faced with provocation, the first great quality we are invited to cultivate is kshanti, a Sanskrit word that means patience, tolerance, and forbearance. Patience is not weakness. It is not passive resignation or allowing ourselves to be treated like a doormat. It is an active and courageous strength. It is the capacity to remain grounded and centered in the midst of a storm, to keep our heart open even when it feels under attack. When someone confronts us with anger or criticism, our nervous system immediately floods with the ancient energies of fight, flight, or freeze. Our heart beats faster, our muscles tense, our breathing becomes shallow. The first step of patience is to mindfully notice these physical sensations arising within us. We use our anchor of the breath to create a space around these feelings, observing them without being hijacked by them. This mindful patience creates the sacred pause, that precious moment between the stimulus of the other person's words and our conditioned, automatic reaction. In that pause lies our freedom to choose a response rooted in wisdom rather than in reactivity. Within that sacred pause, we can practice another profound skill, that of deep listening. In most disagreements, we are not truly listening to the other person. We are listening for a gap in their speech where we can insert our own argument. We are formulating our rebuttal, our defense, our counterattack. Our aim is to win, not to understand. Deep listening turns this entire paradigm on its head. It is the practice of listening with only one goal: to understand the world of the other person as deeply as possible. We listen not just to their words, but to the feelings beneath the words. What is this person truly afraid of? What need is not being met? What past hurt is being triggered? What is the suffering that is causing them to speak or act in this unskillful way? It is vital to remember that understanding is not the same as agreement. We can completely and compassionately understand why someone feels the way they do without condoning their actions or abandoning our own truth. But when a person feels truly heard, when they feel that their inner world has been seen and acknowledged without judgment, something miraculous often happens. Their defensiveness begins to melt. The armor around their heart softens, and a small opening for genuine communication and healing can appear. Of course, sometimes we are faced not with a disagreement, but with a direct and unprovoked verbal attack. A person may lash out at us with insults and anger. The wisdom traditions offer a powerful technique for handling such situations, beautifully illustrated in a story about the Buddha. A man once came to the Buddha and began to insult him in the most vulgar terms. The Buddha listened patiently and silently, with a calm expression on his face, until the man had exhausted his rage and fallen silent. The Buddha then spoke to him softly. "My friend," he said, "if you purchase a gift for someone, and that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift then belong? The man, surprised by the question, replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course, since I bought it." The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Exactly so, and it is the same with your anger. You have come here and offered me this gift of your anger and your insults, but I do not accept it." This simple teaching is incredibly empowering. When another person offers us their anger, their negativity, their poison, we are under no obligation to take it. It is a gift we can politely refuse. By remaining calm, by not reacting, by not engaging in the drama, we are not internalizing their poison. It remains their own possession, their own burden to carry. We do not have to become a dumping ground for the suffering of others. We can maintain our own peace by simply not accepting the unskillful gifts that are offered to us. When we have listened deeply, and when we have chosen not to accept the gift of anger, there may come a time when we must speak. How do we do so wisely? Here, we return to the Noble Eightfold Path, to the practice of right speech. Before we speak in a difficult situation, we can pass our intended words through 4 gentle gates. The first gate is it true? We commit ourselves to honesty, avoiding exaggeration and falsehood. The second gate is it kind? We ask ourselves if our words are intended to harm or to heal. We avoid harsh, abusive, or demeaning language, even if we feel it is justified. The third gate is it helpful or necessary? Will our words contribute to peace and mutual understanding, or will they simply add more fuel to the fire of conflict? Sometimes, the most helpful speech is no speech at all. And the fourth gate is it the right time? Even words that are true, kind, and helpful can cause damage if spoken at the wrong moment, when tempers are hot and hearts are closed. By patiently waiting for the right time, our words are much more likely to be received. By practicing this fourfold art of skillful communication, our speech becomes a tool for healing and connection rather than a weapon of war. We have now explored how the cultivation of compassion and wisdom can transform our relationships with external conflicts and difficult people, turning them from sources of stress into profound opportunities for practice. This same wisdom, this same ability to see clearly and respond with balance, is also desperately needed to navigate another form of conflict that is pervasive in our modern world. This is the inner and outer conflict that arises from our relationship with material things and the relentless cultural pressure to seek our happiness in what we can acquire. This leads us to explore the nature of true wealth and how to find peace in a world that constantly tells us we are not enough until we have more. Having applied our growing wisdom to the external conflicts of our lives, we now turn that same gentle awareness to a more subtle yet pervasive form of conflict, our relationship with the material world. We are born into a culture that operates on a single, seductive promise, the promise that happiness can be acquired. It whispers to us from every screen, every billboard, every advertisement. It tells us, you will be happy when you get that new phone, when you buy that bigger house, when you wear those clothes, when you drive that car. This is the gospel of materialism. It functions by first creating a feeling of lack, a subtle but persistent sense of dissatisfaction with our present lives, and then it offers a product as the cure. This entire system is a massive external engine designed to fuel tana, the insatiable thirst that we have already identified as the very root of our suffering. It places us on a treadmill, one that promises a beautiful destination, but is designed to keep us running in place, forever feeling like we are just one more purchase away from true contentment. Modern psychology has a name for this phenomenon. It is called the hedonic treadmill. The mechanism is simple, and it aligns perfectly with the ancient Buddhist understanding of suffering. First, our mind, conditioned by the culture, fixes on an object of desire. We believe that obtaining this object will bring us lasting happiness. Second, we strive, we work, we sacrifice, and we finally acquire the thing we wanted. In that moment, there is a genuine spike of pleasure, a feeling of excitement and accomplishment. But then, the third and most crucial stage begins, the stage of adaptation. Very quickly, the new and exciting thing becomes the new normal. The pleasure fades. The bigger house just becomes the house. The new car just becomes the car we drive to work. The initial thrill wears off, and the baseline feeling of dissatisfaction returns. The mind, still thirsty, simply finds a new, better, more exciting object to fixate on, and the entire cycle begins again. This is the very definition of viparanama dukkha, the suffering that comes from the impermanent nature of pleasant things. The hedonic treadmill is a recipe for perpetual disappointment, an exhausting and endless loop of desire, temporary relief, and renewed craving. The path of wisdom invites us to step off this treadmill by radically redefining our understanding of wealth. Our culture defines wealth as the accumulation of external things, money, property, possessions. From this perspective, more is always better. The Buddhist view of wealth is almost the exact opposite. True wealth is not measured by how much you have, but by how little you need. It is the profound and liberating richness of a mind that is free from the constant, agitating desire for more. It is the inner abundance of contentment. The Pali word for this is apacchata, being satisfied with little. This doesn't mean we must all live a life of enforced poverty, but that we cultivate a deep appreciation for what we already have, and we find our sense of well-being within ourselves, not in our external circumstances. A person can be surrounded by riches and be utterly impoverished by their own constant wanting. Another person can have very few possessions and be immeasurably wealthy in their own contentment and peace. There is a timeless story that beautifully illustrates this contrast between these two kinds of wealth. A great king who possessed vast kingdoms, mountains of gold, and armies at his command, found himself perpetually restless and unhappy. He heard tales of a wise old sage who lived in a simple hut in the forest, and who was said to be the most peaceful and joyous man in the land. Puzzled by this, the king, adorned in his finest silks and jewels, went to visit the sage. He found the old man sitting peacefully outside his small hut, wearing nothing but a simple cloth. The king, in all his splendor, asked the sage, "I have everything a man could possibly desire, yet my heart is not at peace. You have nothing, yet you radiate a deep and unshakable happiness. What is your secret?" The sage smiled kindly and replied, "Your Majesty, the difference between us is not so complex. You live a life of having what you want, but you are always wanting more. I live a life of wanting what I already have. Your happiness is fragile, for it depends on things that can be broken, stolen, or lost. My happiness depends on nothing external, and so it can never be taken from me." The king, still not fully understanding, pressed further, "But tell me, wise one, which of us is truly the richer man?" The sage's gaze was compassionate. "That too is simple, Your Majesty. I am far richer than you, for I do not desire the palaces and treasures that you possess, but you, in your heart of hearts, desperately desire the peace and contentment that I possess." The wisdom of this story is not a command to renounce all our possessions. It is an invitation to examine the source of our happiness. The practice of overcoming materialism is the practice of simplicity. On an outer level, this can mean consciously decluttering our lives, being more mindful of what we purchase, and asking ourselves before we buy something, do I truly need this, or is this just a fleeting desire? It means unsubscribing from the constant stream of marketing that is designed to make us feel inadequate. But more importantly, it is an inner shift of focus. It is the act of intentionally cultivating our appreciation for the simple, non-material sources of joy that are available to us in every moment and which cost nothing. The feeling of the sun on our skin on a cool day, the taste of clean water when we are thirsty, the shared laughter of a deep conversation with a friend, the quiet satisfaction of creating something with our own hands, the profound stillness of watching the stars on a clear night. When we stop chasing the frantic, fleeting highs promised by materialism, we begin to notice the quiet, steady, and abundant wellspring of joy that was here all along, waiting patiently for our attention. We discover that true wealth is not something we can acquire, but a state of being we can uncover. By simplifying our outer lives, we create the space for our inner lives to flourish. This uncomplicates our hearts, allowing a more wholesome and sustainable kind of joy to emerge. It is not the agitated excitement of getting something new, but the gentle, peaceful happiness of being content with what is. This naturally leads us to explore the nature of this wholesome joy, and particularly one of its most beautiful expressions, the joy that arises not from our own good fortune, but from the happiness and success of others. As we step off the exhausting treadmill of materialism and begin to find joy in the elegant simplicity of what is, our hearts become more sensitive to a different kind of wealth. We have learned to open our hearts with metta, loving kindness, wishing for all beings to be happy. We have learned to respond to pain with karuna, compassion, wishing for all beings to be free from suffering. Now we arrive at the third of the four great abodes of the heart, a quality that can feel radical and counterintuitive in our competitive world. This quality is called mudita, which we can translate as sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the practice of rejoicing in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. It is the ability to feel genuine happiness when something good happens to someone else, as if it were happening to us. In a world that often encourages comparison and envy, mudita is a revolutionary act of generosity of the spirit. To fully appreciate the liberating power of mudita, we must first look honestly at its opposites, the painful states of mind that so often dominate our inner landscape. These are the twin poisons of envy and jealousy. Envy is the painful feeling that arises when we see that someone else has something that we want, a possession, a talent, a relationship, or an experience. It is rooted in a feeling of lack, a belief that their abundance somehow diminishes us. Jealousy is its close cousin, the fear of losing what we already have to someone else. Both of these states are deeply painful. They constrict the heart, fill the mind with bitter resentment, and create a sense of hostile separation between ourselves and others. Our modern culture, particularly through the lens of social media, has become a vast and fertile breeding ground for envy. We are constantly presented with carefully curated highlight reels of other people's lives. We scroll through images of their perfect vacations, their career triumphs, their beautiful families, their creative successes. Our mind then plays the cruel game of comparison, holding up our own messy, complex, behind-the-scenes reality against their polished public image. The inevitable result is a feeling of inadequacy, of being left behind, a quiet but persistent suffering that whispers, "My life is not good enough." Mudita is the direct and powerful antidote to this poison. It is the conscious and courageous choice to flip the script entirely. Instead of seeing another's success as a threat or a reminder of our own lack, we choose to see it as a victory for the human spirit, a cause for celebration. This is a profound rewiring of the heart. It requires us to let go of the ego's zero-sum game, the mistaken belief that there's a limited amount of happiness in the world and that another person's gain is our loss. The wisdom of mudita reveals a beautiful truth. Happiness is not a finite resource. It is infinitely abundant. And the more we can tune our hearts to resonate with the happiness of others, the more our own lives will be filled with joy. Think of it this way. If your happiness depends only on your own personal good fortune, then your opportunities for joy are, by nature, quite limited and infrequent. You might get a promotion, have a good day, or enjoy a pleasant meal. These are wonderful, but they are scattered moments. But what if you could train your heart to feel a genuine spark of joy every time something good happened to anyone? What if you could feel happy when your colleague receives praise, when your neighbor's garden blooms beautifully, when a friend achieves a lifelong dream, when a stranger on the street is laughing with delight? Suddenly, your opportunities for happiness become limitless. The entire world becomes a source of potential joy for you. Every success story you hear, every act of kindness you witness, every happy face you see becomes a deposit into your own account of well-being. This is not a naive denial of the world's suffering. We have already cultivated compassion for that. This is about consciously balancing our attention, about training ourselves to see the goodness and the joy that also exist, and allowing ourselves to be uplifted by them. There is a simple and powerful image that captures the essence of mudita. Imagine a single candle burning steadily in a vast, dark room. Its flame is its own happiness, its own inner light. It provides warmth and illumination. Now, imagine that thousands of other unlit candles are brought into the room. The first candle, our own heart, can now begin to share its flame. It touches its flame to the wick of a second candle, which immediately springs to life. Then it lights a third and a fourth. As this first candle shares its flame with thousands of others, does its own light diminish? Does its own flame grow weaker? No, of course not. It loses absolutely nothing. But what happens to the room? It is transformed from a single point of light into a brilliant, radiant, and warm cavern of illumination. The collective joy is magnificent. This is the magic of mudita. Sharing in the happiness of another does not take anything away from us. It only multiplies the total amount of light and joy in the world, allowing us to bask in that collective radiance. Our own light is not dimmed. It is made brighter by being reflected in the joyous light of all those around us. Like the other qualities of the heart, mudita is a skill that can be cultivated through practice. It begins with our intention. We can start by consciously paying attention to the good things that happen to the people we already love. When a friend or a family member shares good news, our habit might be to immediately think about how it relates to us. The practice of mudita is to pause, to put our own story aside for a moment, and to focus entirely on their joy. We can say to them and to ourselves, "I am so happy for you," and we can truly mean it. We can then expand this practice outward. Make it a habit to actively look for the good in the world around you. Notice the small successes of your colleagues. Appreciate the beauty someone has created in their garden. Feel a sense of warmth when you see strangers being kind to one another. And when the feeling of envy inevitably arises, as it will for all of us, we can meet it with mindfulness. We don't have to shame ourselves for it. We can acknowledge it. Ah, there is envy. We can feel the contraction and the pain that it causes. Then we can gently and intentionally pivot toward mudita. We can consciously wish that person even more success, more happiness. We can try to see their good fortune not as a threat, but as an inspiration, a reminder of what is possible for all of us. We have now explored 3 of the great heart practices. We have learned to meet all beings with metta, loving kindness. We have learned to meet their suffering with karuna, compassion. And we have learned to meet their happiness with mudita, sympathetic joy. But life, as we know, is a messy and unpredictable mixture of all these things. In a single day, we might experience success and failure, pleasure and pain, praise and criticism. How then do we maintain a balanced and steady heart in the midst of this constant swirling dance of opposites? How do we keep from being thrown off balance by the inevitable ups and downs of life? This question leads us to the 4th and final of the immeasurable states of heart, the crowning quality of this training. This is the practice of cultivating a profound and unshakable equilibrium, a state known as upekkha, or equanimity. We have journeyed through the beautiful landscapes of the heart. We have learned to cultivate metta, a boundless loving kindness that wishes well for all beings. We have learned to respond to pain with the tender strength of karuna, or compassion, and we have learned to celebrate the good fortune of others with the selfless joy of mudita. These 3 qualities open our hearts to the vast spectrum of human experience. But as we engage with the world in this open-hearted way, we are constantly met with the dance of opposites, the endless ebb and flow of life. In a single day, we may encounter joy and sorrow, praise and blame, success and failure. If we are carried away by each of these waves, our inner peace will be as fleeting as the morning mist. This is why the 3 preceding qualities find their grounding and their perfection in the 4th and final of the immeasurable states of the heart. This is upekkha, the profound and unshakable grace of equanimity. Equanimity is the pinnacle of this heart training, a state of deep balance, serenity, and non-reactivity. It is the mind that has found its true center and is no longer thrown off balance by the winds of change. In the Buddhist teachings, these are called the 8 worldly winds. four pairs of opposites that blow upon us constantly throughout our lives. The first pair is pleasure and pain, the inevitable physical and emotional sensations that arise and pass away. The second is gain and loss, the acquisition and forfeiture of wealth, possessions, and status. The third is praise and blame, the experience of being admired by others and the experience of being criticized. And the fourth is fame and disrepute, the pleasure of having a good reputation and the pain of being spoken of poorly. For a mind that is not trained, life is a constant state of being tossed about by these winds. We are elated and lifted high when the winds of pleasure, gain, praise, and fame are at our back. We are plunged into despair and bitterness when the winds of pain, loss, blame, and disrepute blow against us. Our happiness is entirely conditional, utterly dependent on which way the wind is blowing at any given moment. The practice of equanimity is the cultivation of an inner stability so profound that it is like a great mountain. The winds still blow, the storms still rage across its slopes, but the mountain itself remains unmoved, majestic, and deeply at peace. It is absolutely essential to understand that equanimity is not the same as its near enemy, indifference. Indifference is a cold, sterile, and withdrawn state. It is a shutting down of the heart, a form of aversion that says, I don't care, in order to protect itself from pain. Indifference creates distance. Equanimity, on the other hand, is a state of profound engagement with life, but from a place of wisdom and inner balance. It is warm, not cold. It is radiant, not dull. It is born not from shutting down, but from seeing clearly. True equanimity arises from the deep, intuitive understanding of the laws of impermanence and cause and effect. We see that all things, pleasant and painful, arise due to conditions and will pass away when those conditions change. Because we understand this, we do not desperately cling to the pleasant or violently push away the painful. We can experience everything fully, but with a spacious and non-attached wisdom. Equanimity allows us to love someone with all our heart, without the painful grip of possessive clinging. It allows us to feel deep compassion for someone's suffering, without being consumed and incapacitated by their grief. It is the perfect balance of a sensitive, open heart and a calm, stable mind. There is a story that captures the essence of this unshakable mind. A Zen master decided to build his humble temple at the base of a huge, active volcano. A student came to visit him and was very alarmed. Throughout the day, the ground would tremble and puffs of dark smoke would rise from the volcano's crater. The student, full of anxiety, asked the master, "Venerable sir, how can you possibly live in this dangerous place? Aren't you terrified that the volcano will erupt at any moment and destroy everything?" The Zen master calmly gazed up at the majestic, smoking peak for a long moment. Then he turned to the student and said with a gentle smile, "It erupts. That is its nature." He then gestured to a simple meditation cushion inside the temple. "I sit. This is my nature." The master was not indifferent to the volcano. He was fully aware of its immense and dangerous power, but he did not live in a state of constant reactive fear. He had accepted the nature of the volcano as it was, a powerful force beyond his control. He clearly distinguished between what he could not control the mountain and what he could control his own response, his own practice of sitting in stillness. His inner peace was not dependent on the volcano becoming dormant. It was a peace that could coexist with the reality of the rumbling mountain. This is upekkha. It is the ability to be fully present with life in all its beauty and its danger, with a mind that is steady, clear, and free. The four great qualities of the heart-loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity work together like a beautiful symphony. Metta is the soaring, joyful sound of the violins, wishing for happiness. Karuna is the deep, resonant sorrow of the cellos, feeling the pain of the world. Mudita is the bright, celebratory sound of the trumpets, rejoicing in success. And upekkha, equanimity, is the wise and silent conductor. The conductor feels every note, from the highest to the lowest. He is intimately connected to the joy and the sorrow, the celebration and the lament. But he is not swept away by any of it. He holds all of the different sounds, all of the different emotions, in a vast, harmonious balance. He allows each instrument to be fully heard, each emotion to be fully expressed, without letting any one section overwhelm the others and create chaos. It is this grounding in equanimity that allows our love to be wise, our compassion to be strong, and our joy to be boundless. It is the quality that allows us to engage fully with a beautiful, messy, and unpredictable symphony of life with an open heart and an unshaken mind. We have now explored the core teachings for understanding the workings of our mind, and we have cultivated the four immeasurable states of the heart. We have the map and the compass, the tools for both wisdom and love. The journey from here is one of synthesis, of weaving these profound understandings and heartfelt qualities into the very fabric of our moment-to-moment existence. It is the process of taking our practice off the meditation cushion and bringing it into our every step, our every breath, our every interaction. This is the art of integrating our practice into the whole of our daily life. We have now journeyed through the great landscapes of the mind and the heart. We have been given the map of the Four Noble Truths, and we have begun to cultivate the beautiful qualities of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. We have the tools, but a toolbox, no matter how well stocked, is useless if it is left in the garage. The ultimate purpose of this path is not to become an expert meditator who can sit in perfect stillness on a cushion. The purpose is to bring the qualities of wisdom and compassion we cultivate on the cushion into the messy, beautiful, and unpredictable reality of our daily lives. Many of us make a sharp distinction between our practice time and our real life. We believe that peace is something we find for 10 or 20 minutes in the morning, and the rest of the day is about stress and survival. The next great step on our journey is to dissolve this imaginary wall. It is to understand that our true meditation hall is not the quiet room where we sit, but the world itself. The goal is to transform every moment into an opportunity for practice. It is helpful to think of our practice as having two wings, a formal wing and an informal wing. Both are essential for flight. Formal practice is the time we deliberately set aside each day to sit in stillness, to focus on the breath, to cultivate the qualities of the heart. This is our training ground. It is like a musician practicing their scales or an athlete building their strength in the gym. This dedicated time is crucial. It builds the muscle of our awareness. It deepens our concentration, and it gives us a reference point, a direct memory of what a calm and centered mind feels like. Without this foundation, it is very difficult to maintain our presence in the midst of a busy day. Even 5 or 10 minutes of dedicated formal practice each day can create a powerful anchor of stability and peace. But this formal practice is only half the journey. Its true purpose is to prepare us for the informal practice, which is the art of bringing mindfulness into our ordinary, everyday activities. This is where the real transformation happens. It is the conscious effort to sprinkle moments of awareness throughout our day to close the gap between the person we are on the cushion and the person who answers emails, drives in traffic, and talks to their family. This is the art of finding the sacred in the mundane, of discovering that every single task, no matter how humble, can be a doorway to presence and peace. Let's take the simple, common chore of washing the dishes. For most of us, this is an automatic task we rush through to get to the next thing. While our hands are in the water, our mind is a million miles away, replaying an argument from earlier in the day, worrying about a future deadline, or lost in a fantasy. The practice of mindfulness invites us to transform this experience. It invites us to wash the dishes for the purpose of washing the dishes. As you stand at the sink, feel the solid ground beneath your feet. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. Notice the scent of the soap, the smooth texture of the plate, the sound of the water rinsing it clean. When your mind wanders, as it will, gently guide it back to the simple, sensory reality of the task at hand. In these few minutes, you are not solving any great problems, but you are giving yourself a profound gift. You are stepping off the treadmill of anxious thought and resting in the calm oasis of the present moment. You discover that peace is not dependent on what you are doing, but on the quality of attention you bring to the doing. This same principle can be applied to almost any activity. The cup of coffee or tea you drink each morning can become a 2-minute meditation, a moment to simply be with the warmth, the aroma, and the taste. Your daily commute, so often a source of frustration, can become a practice. Feel your hands on the steering wheel. Listen to the sounds of the road as just sounds, without the layer of judgment. Use each red light not as a moment of impatience, but as a bell of mindfulness, a gentle reminder to return to your breath, to relax your shoulders, to check in with your body. We can practice mindful walking as we move from our car to our office, feeling the sensation of our feet making contact with the ground. These are not grand, dramatic practices. They are small, quiet moments of presence, woven into the fabric of our day. They are like little islands of peace that we can visit anytime. Our lives are full of these small gaps, these moments of waiting in line at the store, of waiting for a website to load, of standing in an elevator. Our habit is to immediately fill these gaps with distraction, to pull out our phone and scroll. The practice is to use these gaps as gifts of time, as opportunities to take a single conscious breath, to feel our body, and to come home to the present moment. There is a famous Zen story that beautifully illustrates this integration of practice into life. A young, eager student approached his Zen master and asked, "Master, what was your life like before you attained enlightenment?" The master replied simply, "I chopped wood and I carried water." The student was a bit disappointed by this mundane answer, but he pressed on, thinking the real magic must have happened after the great event. "And what is your life like now, after you are enlightened?" he asked. The master smiled and gave the exact same answer. "I chop wood and I carry water." The profound wisdom of this story is that the outer circumstances of our life do not necessarily change. The great transformation is entirely internal. Before enlightenment, we chop wood while our mind is lost in yesterday's regrets. We carry water while our heart is filled with anxiety about tomorrow. We are physically present, but mentally and emotionally, we are somewhere else entirely. After awakening, we simply chop wood. We simply carry water. Our mind, our body, and our heart are all present for the task at hand. We discover that enlightenment is not about escaping our ordinary life, but about becoming fully, radically present for it. It is not a single spectacular event that happens one day, but the quiet, moment-by-moment accumulation of thousands of small acts of presence. As we continue to practice in this integrated way, as we learn to be present for the simple act of washing a dish or feeling our footsteps on the ground, a new and deeper perception of the world begins to dawn. We start to see that the act of washing the dish is not separate from the water, or the soap, or the hands doing the washing. We feel that our breath is not separate from the air in the room, which is not separate from the trees outside that produce the oxygen. We begin to directly perceive the intricate, seamless web of connection that links all things. This growing insight into the profound interconnectedness of all of life is the natural fruit of a mindful existence. As we practice bringing our awareness into the simple moments of our daily lives, a profound shift in perception begins to take place. We start to notice the subtle threads of connection that weave our world together. When we mindfully drink a cup of tea, we can sense the presence of the rain, the sun, and the soil that nourished the tea plant. We can sense the farmer who tended the leaves and the potter who shaped the cup. In a single, simple act, the entire universe seems to be present. This dawning awareness is the gateway to one of the most sublime and central teachings of the Buddhist path, a concept known as pratitya samutpada, or dependent origination. This is the truth that nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises in dependence upon other factors. Nothing has a separate, independent self. The teaching can be summarized in a simple, powerful formula. This is because that is. This is not because that is not. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. This is not a metaphysical theory to be debated, but a reality to be observed. It is the ultimate antidote to the painful illusion of our own separateness. To help the mind grasp this vast and beautiful truth, the ancient sages of India conceived of a stunning and poetic image. It is the metaphor of Indra's net. Imagine a magnificent, infinite net that stretches out in all directions throughout the cosmos. At every single point where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, glittering, perfectly clear jewel. The net has no beginning and no end. And here is the miraculous quality of this net. Because each jewel is perfectly polished, if you were to look closely into the surface of any one jewel, you would see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire net. And not only that, but each of the reflections within that single jewel also contains the reflection of all the other jewels, and so on into infinity. Each jewel is a unique, individual point, yet it contains the whole. Its very existence is defined by its relationship to every other jewel. If any one jewel were to be touched, the entire net would shimmer and tremble. If any one jewel were to be removed, all the others would reflect its absence. This is the vision of reality that dependent origination points to. Each of us, each being, each event is like one of these jewels, distinct yet intrinsically connected to and reflective of the whole. Our sense of being a solid, separate self is an illusion created by looking at our own jewel without seeing the infinite reflections it contains. This cosmic metaphor can be brought down to earth with a simple teaching offered by the great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. He invites us to look deeply into a simple sheet of paper. On the surface, it is just a piece of paper, but if we look with the eyes of interconnectedness, we can see a cloud floating in it. Why? Because if there were no cloud, there would be no rain. If there were no rain, the trees could not grow. And if there are no trees, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is an essential part of the paper's existence. Looking more deeply, we can also see the sunshine. Without the energy of the sun, the tree cannot perform photosynthesis and grow. So the sun is also in the sheet of paper. And what else? We can see the logger who cut the tree, and in the logger, we can see his parents who gave him life, and the bread he ate for breakfast that gave him the strength to work. And in the bread, we can see the wheat, the field, the farmer, and the rain and sun that nourish the wheat. All of this is present in this single sheet of paper. We can see the miners who dug the ore to make the steel for the logger's saw. We can see the person who drove the truck to the paper mill. We can see our own hand reaching out to pick up the paper. If we were to take away any one of these elements, the cloud, the sun, the logger, the farmer, the trees, the sheet of paper as we know it could not exist. The paper is empty of a separate, independent self, but it is full of the entire cosmos. The verb to be, Thich Nhat Hanh teaches, is more accurately to interbe. We are all interconnected. We are. When this understanding moves from an intellectual concept to a felt, lived reality, it has the power to heal the deepest wounds of the human heart. The painful feeling of alienation, of being a lonely, separate fragment in a vast and indifferent universe, begins to dissolve. We realize that we are not, and have never been, alone. We are an intrinsic, essential, and beautiful part of a vast and shimmering web of life. We belong to the earth, to the sky, to each other. This brings with it a profound sense of coming home, a feeling of peace and belonging that no amount of personal achievement or material wealth could ever provide. With this sense of belonging comes a deep and natural sense of responsibility. When we truly understand that the net is interconnected, we realize that our every action, our every word, and even our every thought has ripples that extend far beyond our immediate perception. Like touching one of the jewels in Indra's net, our actions cause the entire web to vibrate. An act of thoughtless cruelty or greed sends a shudder of pain throughout the net, but equally, an act of quiet kindness. A word of gentle encouragement, a moment of sincere compassion, also sends a beautiful, healing shimmer throughout the whole. Our lives matter. Our choices matter. This is not a heavy burden, but a joyful and empowering invitation to live with profound care and intention. We understand that our own liberation is not a selfish pursuit. My well-being is intrinsically linked to your well-being and to the well-being of the trees, the rivers, and the earth. We are all in this together. Compassion is no longer a moral duty we must force ourselves to practice. It becomes the only logical and natural response to the reality of our interconnected existence. This entire journey of awakening, from the first moment we notice our restless mind to this vast cosmic vision of interconnectedness, is like a great spiral. We begin by looking inward at our own suffering and its causes. We then learn to open our hearts outward, cultivating kindness and compassion for others. This outward gaze, when refined by mindfulness, then reveals our profound connection to everything, dissolving the very boundary between inner and outer. And now, this journey leads us back to where we began, to our own heart, to our own mind, but with a completely transformed vision. Having seen that we are not separate and that we are connected to everything, we are now ready to ask the final question. What is the nature of this awareness that perceives this connection? What is the fundamental nature of our own being when all the illusions of separation have been stripped away? This is the final step of the journey, the discovery of our own true home. Our journey has taken us on a great spiral, from the inner turmoil of our own mind to the vast, interconnected web of all existence. We have seen that our sense of being a separate self is an illusion, and that in truth, we are deeply woven into the fabric of the cosmos. This profound insight into our connection with everything now leads us back, full circle, to the most intimate question of all. If I am not a separate, isolated self, then what am I? What is the fundamental nature of this consciousness that is looking out through my eyes right now? The final and most hopeful teaching on this path offers an answer that is both startling and deeply comforting. It suggests that our true nature, the very essence of our being, is already whole, complete, and endowed with the qualities of an awakened mind. This is the teaching of Buddha nature. It is the ultimate homecoming. Buddha nature is a potential, a seed that exists within every single sentient being, without exception. It is the inherent capacity for wisdom, compassion, and peace that lies at the very core of our consciousness. It is not something we need to build, to earn, or to acquire from some outside source. It is our deepest and most authentic identity, our spiritual birthright. Just as every acorn has the potential to become a mighty oak tree, every being has the innate potential to awaken. Our journey on the spiritual path, then, is not about becoming something we are not. It is not about turning a pebble into a diamond. It is about realizing we were the diamond all along, merely covered in the dust and grime of our own confusion. A beautiful and classic metaphor is used to explain this. Our true nature, our Buddha nature, is like the vast, open, and brilliantly blue sky. It is always present, unstained, and limitless. But on most days, this sky is obscured by clouds. These clouds are our fleeting mental and emotional states, our greed, our anger, our fear, our jealousy, our ignorance. When a dark storm cloud of anger passes, the sky appears to be angry and dark. When a thick fog of confusion descends, the sky appears to be confused and gray. From our limited perspective on the ground, we can become so identified with the clouds that we forget the blue sky even exists. We believe that we are the storm, but the truth is, no matter how thick or dark the clouds may be, they are never the sky itself. They are temporary phenomena passing through the sky. The pure, blue, boundless sky is never damaged, never stained, and never diminished by the clouds that obscure it. The practice of wisdom is the wind that gently blows the clouds away. The practice of compassion is the warm sun that helps them to dissolve. The path is not about creating a blue sky, but simply about allowing the clouds to disperse so that we may see and rest in the nature of the sky that was always and already here. There is a powerful parable in the Lotus Sutra that illustrates this truth with heartbreaking beauty. There was once a very poor man who, having fallen on hard times, left his home to wander the land, begging for food and shelter. He was exhausted and destitute. One day, he visited the home of a very wealthy and compassionate old friend. The friend was overjoyed to see him and prepared a great feast, giving him food, drink, and a place to rest. Seeing his friend's poverty, and knowing that his friend was too proud to accept a direct gift of charity, the wealthy man decided to give him a secret and lasting treasure. While the poor man was asleep, the friend took a priceless, flawless jewel and carefully sewed it into the inner lining of the poor man's ragged robe. The next morning, the poor man, unaware of the treasure he now carried, said his goodbyes and continued his life of wandering and poverty. For years and years he struggled, always looking for happiness and wealth outside of himself, never knowing that he possessed a treasure beyond measure. One day, old and weary, he happened to cross paths with his wealthy friend again. The friend was shocked to see him still in such a wretched state. "My friend," he said, "why have you lived this life of hardship? Years ago, I sewed a priceless jewel into your robe so that you would have all you ever needed. Where is it?" The man, confused, felt inside his tattered robe and for the first time discovered the magnificent gem. In that moment, he realized that he had been a wealthy man all along, living the life of a pauper. We are all this poor man. Our Buddha nature is this priceless jewel, sewn into the very fabric of our being from the very beginning. But unaware of it, we wander through life feeling incomplete, feeling like something is missing. We seek our wealth outside of ourselves, in possessions, in relationships, in accomplishments, in experiences, hoping that something external will finally make us feel whole. The teachings of wisdom, the entire spiritual path, are like the compassionate friend who doesn't give us a new jewel, but simply points to the one we already possess. The path is the process of turning our attention inward and rediscovering the treasure that has been with us all along. This fundamentally reframes the entire spiritual journey. It is not a process of construction, but a process of deconstruction. It is not a journey of becoming, but a journey of unlearning. We are not trying to build a new, enlightened personality on top of our old, flawed one. We are simply, gently, and patiently removing the layers of dust, the layers of conditioned beliefs, false identities, and fearful habits that have hidden our own inner radiance from our view. Peace is not a destination we must struggle to reach. It is our true home that we must learn to return to. Wisdom is not something we gain, but something we uncover. Enlightenment is not a spectacular achievement, but the simple, natural, and joyful recognition of what was true from the very beginning. The end of the great search is the realization that there was nothing to find. The end of the great struggle is the realization that there was no real enemy to fight. There was only a case of mistaken identity. All the practices, from the simplest observation of the breath, to the cultivation of a compassionate heart, to the profound insight into the nature of reality, are all designed to do one thing, to help us wake up from the dream of our own inadequacy. They are designed to help us stop searching, stop struggling, and simply rest in the luminous, peaceful, and boundless awareness that is our own true nature. We realized that we were already home. We were already whole. We were already free. Our journey began in the quiet of a sleepless night, with a mind that would not be still. It began with a familiar feeling of being tossed about on the waves of our own thoughts, our anxieties, and our regrets. We started this path together from a place of struggle, acknowledging the deep and restless disquiet that so often lies beneath the surface of our busy lives. From that honest starting point, we have traveled far. We gave a name to our inner turmoil, the monkey mind, and learned not to fight it, but to befriend it. We discovered the simple, profound anchor of the breath, a tool that can bring us home to the present moment at any time. We looked with courage into the nature of our own dissatisfaction, our dukkha, and we found its root in our own clinging thirst, our tanha. And in that discovery, we found the key to our own freedom. We saw that an end to our struggle is possible. We learned to walk the middle way, a path of balance and wisdom. We found within our own hearts an inexhaustible spring of loving kindness, a boundless compassion for all who suffer, and a selfless joy in the happiness of others. We gazed into the deep truths of impermanence and interconnectedness, seeing that we are not isolated fragments, but part of a vast and beautiful web of life. And finally, our journey has led us back home, to the quiet realization that the peace, the wisdom, and the wholeness we have been seeking were never truly lost. They are our own true nature, the priceless jewel that has been with us all along. The ultimate message of this path is both simple and revolutionary. Peace is not a destination you arrive at when all your problems are solved. It is not something you will find in a different place, a different job, or a different relationship. It is not dependent on the world outside you becoming quiet and orderly. Peace is an inside job. It is the unshakable serenity of the deep ocean, which remains profoundly still even while storms rage upon its surface. It is our natural state, our true home, a place of refuge that is always available to us, no matter which way the worldly winds may be blowing. You are not a helpless victim of your mind or your circumstances. Within you, right now, is the capacity for profound peace. You have the anchor of your breath. You have the seat of compassion in your heart. You have the luminous, aware nature that is your birthright. The path to awakening does not require a grand gesture. It begins with a single, gentle step. It begins with the intention to be just a little bit kinder to yourself. It begins with the curiosity to watch just one thought pass by without chasing it. It begins, always, with this present moment. So as our journey together comes to a close, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, and may you live with ease. And may you take, just for now, one conscious breath, and in that breath, may you feel the quiet, simple, and profound peace of coming home.